by the way, this morning says he will continue to oppose any nomination until the DOJ flare-up with the current Fed chair is resolved. And Warren sort of backs him up today. Right. It's a key voice in Senate banking.
Well, I get that, but again, I come back to the idea that it's not like that Trump has some sort of wild-eyed way. Trump just says that you can have great growth, low inflation. And I think that if you take this job, you agree with that. And that's okay. It's not, I think that many of us would say, well, listen, wherever the chips fall, we're going to do what's necessary. So if inflation heats up, but with growth, maybe we have to tamp growth down. I just don't think that you're buying into that if you're Kevin Warsh. Maybe this Damascus-like conversion that he has when he gets the president. That's what a lot of people.
When it comes to qualifications to be Fed chair, nobody can argue that he doesn't have them.
Oh, I'm not saying that. Again, I'm not saying. I'm just saying that if you take this job, you do not. You know what happens if you disagree.
And you become an enemy of the president.
Right, and that's not a great position to be in for anyone in this country. Anyone that we know, if they are the enemy of the president, says behind back, not on air. Wow.
Yeah, I know, but he's going to have to deal with a bunch of Fed governors that may disagree with him.
Okay, forget it. He's not going to be a housemate for the president. What do you want me to say? I'm saying
one example would be the current chair hasn't gone anywhere despite all the browbeating. In fact, she might stay on.
She can stay on, but Jay Powell is a man of a different set of principles. I think there are a lot of people would view this as a cabinet-like appointment because that's how I think Trump believes it.
But it's not a cabinet. It's not a cabinet.
It's not. But I understand your point. He views the Fed the same way he views the DOJ or the FBI.
Right now, I mean, think about the DOJ is historically been sacrosanct, other than Bobby Kennedy, the brother of President Kennedy. I mean, even the DOJ was very sacrosanct against Nixon. I just think the DOJ is regarded as being president. It's an arm. It's like his law firm. And I think, okay, I'm going to say it, even with Warsh in, I think the president regards it as his bank.
Okay, well, we'll see how it all goes then.
Oh, that's really great.
Yeah,
That's good. That's what I often say. Like, how about who do you think, Seattle or the Patriots, or do you see how it goes?
No, let's see how it goes. I think Seattle.
Right. But what you're not. Well, the next question then is, do you expect it to result in destructive policy?
Well, no, but there are other people, and I don't believe this is. This is where I think I don't believe that view of the president's is that far wrong. Because I think that you want to have a growing country because you want many more people to participate in the growth. When you listen to Steve Squeri this morning, like I talked to him in American Express, the rich people are doing great. I think the attitude that the president has, that I think Warsh should have, is that maybe others should participate too. I listened to Andrew's Mondami interview. I mean, look, we can't have two countries. If you promote great growth and accept a little bit of inflation, then more people will get wealthy. Now, they're on the other side of Powell, too. I'm not against what the president wants. I'm just saying that if you take Warsh's attitude, it's probably in sync with what the president wants. And that the president's not asking for some sort of crazy thing here. He wants more people to do better. And he does. You can't, have more people done better in the last few years in this country? No. It's been just this rich group. And I don't think that it's so crazy what the president wants, and therefore Warsh toes the line. I don't think it's that bad.
We'll talk more about what it means for Fed independence. Last night, the president sort of framed it as an us versus them thing between him and Fed governors. Steve Leisman's got some more breaking news on the Fed this morning on a busy day. Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Carl, this is worth paying attention to. I think Fed Governor Waller explaining his dissent, saying the policy rate should be closer to the neutral rate, which he considers to be 3%. But another way, he thinks there's another 50 or 75 basis points the Fed should be lower right now. Monetary policy, he says, is still restricting economic activity, and he's very worried about the job market. He says the data is making clear that further easing is needed. The labor market, it remains weak, and he goes on to say the 2025 jobs data will likely be revised to show no job growth. There's substantial deterioration in the labor market, he says, is a significant risk that he wants to watch out for. It's appropriate monetary policy to look through tariff effects. This, of course, coming with a higher than expected inflation, wholesale inflation this number, as long as he says inflation expectations are anchored. Excluding tariff effects, Fed is on a path to the 2% inflation goal. And Carl, I just want to agree with you. It's not a cabinet position.
Thanks for the clarification.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, also on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you want to see the telemetry version, you can see it on my website or on YouTube. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Markets are moving. Big news today in regards to a nominee for the federal chair. It's Warsh. Will he be confirmed? Most likely, but it's going to be a slow confirmation process because of the legal wranglings that are going on with Powell. So we're probably not going to have a confirmed Chairman Warsh until, maybe weeks from now. But we'll see what happens. There's some movements and energy. We'll go over that when the market opens. The market will be opening up in about 20 minutes or so. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it if you share the links. Ask your social media to follow me. You can subscribe to many of my different platforms: YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble, X, GETTR, TikTok, Substack, Patreon. If you like the free content that I create and it's helping you with your trading or your investments and helping with your health, please donate on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, and buy me a coffee. Be a paid member to my Patreon channel or Substack channel. It's a great way to help support the work that I do. All these videos I do are for free, all of them. You can also listen to my audio podcast on Podomatic, Apple Podcast, and on my website under broadcast. Please go to my store and get the great products that I offer. I have ebooks, course material on immunology and pulmonology, and supplements. The supplement that I have in my hand, structural nano silver toothpaste. It helps to whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize, improve your oral cavity. And when you do that, your teeth are better, your gum health is better. It reduces the inflammation at the gum level, and it helps with your cardiovascular health and valvular health. A lot of people don't realize poor oral hygiene can lead to problems with cardiovascular issues and valvular issues. So use this structural nano silver toothpaste. It has no fluoride. It's a very high quality toothpaste. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to get. And it helps to neutralize because of the structural nano silver. That's really important during the winter season. So you might want to stock up on the toothpaste. I also have gels. I have the gel in the quick dispenser version and also in the tube version. All right, use them the same way. You can apply it on your skin daily as a daily topical skincare. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, you can put it on that lesion and it'll help to heal it. If you're not feeling well, it's the cold season, or people around you are not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, around your mouth. Lightly coat your nostrils. You'll stay active for 5.5 hours and neutralize. Super important. If you have a runny nose, clean your nostrils out. Put some gel, lightly coat, put the gel in the nostrils. It'll help to dry up that drainage. It's a great way, especially at night, to help sleep if you have drainage. So please, take my advice, get the gel, and get healthy. Very important for the winter season. And since we have a cold spell and people are going in and out from outside and back inside, going to work and all that, you're going to have runny noses, and eventually you're going to start getting a cold. So you better start getting the products that I have. Structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in lemongrass, charcoal tea tree, and in peppermint. Get a few bars for your household. Very high quality, help the health of your skin, and it helps to neutralize. Super important. So not only is it helping with your pores in your skin, but it's also neutralizing. Super important for the winter season, right? All right, let's listen into CNBC.
Sure, although I love the guy, but he's
Doing okay this morning.
He deserved it. He's been under pressure for so long, David. He's a terrific guy, but I do think we have to know who we're dealing with. Apple, free cash flow for Apple is $51.5 billion in the quarter. For Meta, it's $14 billion. For Microsoft, it's only $5.8 billion.
Well,
I mean, they had a lot of room.
look at their CapEx numbers. They're in a completely different world
I know.
than
No,
Microsoft
everyone's
or
saying-
Meta or Amazon. Completely or Alphabet.
Well, they're all
Their CapEx numbers are nothing compared to them.
Well, how about the fact that
That's your free
I
cash flow.
asked him about how much this Google relationship is going to cost. And all these people are saying Google's going to cost them a fortune, right? And it wasn't like he really addressed it. He didn't address it. So how are they able to come up with that? For instance, I say to Tim, this is our pre-interview. What are the actual terms? People say it's $1 billion back, and $20 billion that you pay to them. But do we know the terms continue in Google? Well, here's what I found out. I have a good relationship with Tim. Of course I know them. We're not revealing them. Laughter.
You found out very little, and it's an important relationship.
They're making stuff up. They're making stuff up. They don't know any more than I do.
Gemini is going to power Siri for the AI.
Right. But I'm telling you, these people know no more than I do. And they're telling me that it's going to be really expensive. These are the people who told me that the tariff was going to wreck the numbers. I said, absolutely not. These are people who told me that China was going to be awful. I said, absolutely not. Now, I'm not saying I know more than they do. I'm saying they know less than I do.
But you should have just told everybody to buy SanDisk. Because
Which is up
got
23%.
Okay, see,
I mean,
I said it's going to 800.
it's
I said it's going to
180
800.
points.
I said it's going to
I
800.
mean, look at this thing.
It's going in a straight line to 800. You can't get to 800 without going through 600.
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh my. Oh my. Oh my.
Well, Sandus deserves it too. They've been laboring the vineyard, the vineyards forever.
There
And
is
I'm not talking about
no-
more than the Manischewitz
No
vineyards,
stopping
not the
demand
French
for memory. Their CEO saying this is completely demand-driven phenomenon. What's going on in the market? He says they've been transparent for well over a year. What their
666.
supply plans are. They're investing heavily in the market. What's happening is we're just not getting enough visibility into what the demand side is, what the demand really
They're
is.
being very, Dave Goffler's a very conservative guy, and he is, we remember him in very rough times. By the way, he's paid down all that debt. He deserves it. This guy, it's his time. It's his time.
Yes.
It's Dave's time.
Okay.
All right, let's go. You know what? Can we just skip the tech for a while, Carl, and go to oil and gas? We need a good oil and gas man right now. Chevron delivering an earnings beat as production hit a record. Oil giant Chevron sees a lot of upside in Venezuela. Hey, Mike Worth is the man who's in charge of Chevron. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Great quarter, raising quarterly dividend, output coming up. What do you think is driving your increase in output? Because I don't want to just pin it on Venezuela.
Well, 2025 was a year, a record year for us, really, in growth, execution, and shareholder returns. Adjusted free cash flow was up 35%, even as oil prices were 15% lower. We set a production record worldwide. We set production records here in the U.S. We had our highest U.S. refinery throughput since the 1990s. And we returned a record $27 billion in cash to our shareholders. As you mentioned, we increased our dividend this week, 4%, the 39th year in a row that we've increased the dividend. And our shares yield about 3 times the S&P 500 in terms of the dividend yield. So we've got good organic growth. We've consolidated Hess for a portion of last year, started up a big project in Kazakhstan, continued to grow in the Permian, grow in the Gulf of America. We've got a broad, diversified portfolio that continues to deliver high margin, low cost growth.
Mike, I think it's important for our viewers to know this is being done at a time when oil is not doing that well. Your numbers seem to have gotten in a way to have, I hesitate to do this, but I'm going to say it, more secular growth than the other oil companies that I see.
Well, we've certainly been focused on growing free cash flow. Some of that comes with volume, some of it comes with margin expansion. And as I mentioned, even in a period of declining oil prices, which we've seen over the last 12 months, we've been able to grow our free cash flow, which supports those distributions to shareholders. We're taking cost out of our business. We're becoming more efficient. We're only scratching the surface on what we can do with AI. I think that's the next leg of both efficiency and asset productivity we'll see in our business. So we're working across the entire portfolio to drive that growth in free cash flow.
I'm glad you mentioned AI, not just for what you're doing with it, but I know that you use the amazing natural gas numbers. Has any hyperscalers contacted you and just said, Mike, we need to take down a huge amount of your natural gas. Let's do a deal.
Well, we're certainly talking to all the hyperscalers about power supply. Absolutely. They're very interested in a project that we're developing in West Texas. We produce 3 billion cubic feet per day in the U.S. And we've got 7 of GE Vernova's largest turbines with secure delivery dates. We've got a site, we're into permitting, engineering, and we're in discussions with the biggest companies in the world, some of which you've already mentioned this morning, about a purpose-built energy park not connected to the grid, so it doesn't drive up prices for consumers, but scaled alongside of their data center growth to support their ambitions. So we're in contact with them later this year. We would expect to announce a customer and more definitive details on this.
In 2026? Really?
Absolutely. First power in 2027.
Wow. Didn't know that. Okay. I just want to get to Venezuela before I go to my colleagues. I know that there are things called productive participation contracts in Venezuela, including one that literally just passed. It seems to be that they could make it so that they can tell you how much you're going to make, but it sounds like you would be able to produce a little bit more. And under this, because you stayed down there, is there a possibility that you will be the most, like a Kazakhstan deal? You'll be the guys because they're the ones you trust. They trust you, and you know how to do it, and you know how to do it without employees getting hurt.
Well, we've stayed when others didn't. We're getting paid back some debts that we're owed. And it does give us a significant head start, and the country has tremendous long-term potential. We've been there for most of the last 100 years, and it's got the potential to grow up to 50% over just the next 18 to 24 months. Our position does, on top of going from 50,000 barrels a day to 250,000 over just the last 2 years. We'll need some additional authorizations from the U.S. government in order to do so, but we see this as a valuable resource option for the future in our portfolio. And as you say, our focus remains on safe and reliable operations as always.
Mike, Rubio was on the Hill this week. A lot of discussion about security and whether or not the administration would put forward more military assets to maintain security. Do you consider it safe? I mean, the president this week said Americans will be able to visit soon. Do you see it as that kind of stable ground?
Yeah, Carl, we've been operating there for, through the last many years, and including when there's been concerns about military action and other things. We've got good, strong safety protocols and security protocols in place in the country. Our people are safe, and that's the first focus that we have. So yes, there are parts of the country that I would say are less safe. Areas where we operate, certainly we feel it's appropriate for us to have expatriate employees there as well as national employees, and our operations have continued uninterrupted through this entire period of time.
I think, Mike, it's David, when people talk about security, though, they're also just talking about security of my ability to operate in the country and not be nationalized again. I mean, literally yesterday, the president there signed a law that opens the nation's oil sector to privatization. Is it your expectation that if you do make plans to invest a lot more capital, you're going to be able to get a return on that? Because in 10 years, that privatization will still be in place, or 15 years? How confident are you about that?
Well, this will evolve over time, I think, David. We're still taking a look at this new hydrocarbon law that passed yesterday. Stability of government and the rule of law is very important for us anywhere in the world that we operate. We consider security, contract terms, the ability to get a return on our investment, commercial stability, regulatory predictability when we make investment decisions. And so, like everywhere, those things matter. I think we see Venezuela taking steps in a positive direction to address those issues, which will encourage investment not only from a company like ours, but from others that I think are also considering the opportunities there.
Right. And when do you think you'll actually have a better sense for what that law really means? I mean, again, as you point out, just signed yesterday, but obviously seems to be an important moment for the country.
Well, I do think it's an important moment because they recognize that the terms there have made it difficult for companies like ours to invest there. Our position on the ground has been primarily focused on recovering debt that we're owed, and we've been successfully doing that. But the growth of the production of the country is going to require new capital and companies beyond ours to come in and do the same kind of a thing. And so I think that's what they're trying to address. It'll take us a little while to understand what's in the new bill, and then of course we're looking for other signs of economic reforms and progress and stability in government. And so all of these factor into our plans. We'll stay very disciplined on capital. We've got a global portfolio that we can invest in around the world, as we've been discussing earlier. And so Venezuela's opportunities will be stacked up against those others, and we'll have to deliver returns that are competitive.
But just quickly, Leviathan, final investment decision, 2.1 billion cubic feet off the coast of Israel. Where are you going to put that? Where's that going to go? You need a pipeline.
We just sanctioned a big project at Leviathan, which is offshore Israel. This is an area that's a world-class resource. We've got a platform, Leviathan and Tamar, both of which we're expanding already with production that'll come on later this year, and then a bigger expansion of Leviathan that comes on towards the end of the decade. This supplies the majority of the gas into Israel, a lot of gas into Jordan, and the growth will also supply Egypt, where some of this gas goes today, but a significantly larger amount will go in the future. So it's important for regional energy supply, regional trade, and security, and it's a beautiful resource.
All right, Mike, thank you. I hope your knee surgery, you continue to get better. I know it's been a bear, but I suspect that you'll be running around in a week.
Making good progress, Jim. Thanks very much. Great to see everybody.
Absolutely, Mike. Runs Chef.
All right, the markets are going to open up in about 4 minutes. There is some movement in natural gas and oil that we'll cover. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the cleanse max 35 or max 14. This will help to boost up your immune system, slow down the aging process. It works really simple. You just take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or so, and then swallow it. This will improve your oral cavity, neutralize, help your oral pharynx, which is the back of your throat, maintain a mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. By doing that, you're boosting up your immune system. And when you're neutralizing in your oral cavity, you're improving the health of your teeth and your gums, but also reducing plaque formation. A lot of people don't understand that poor oral hygiene can lead to plaque formation in your blood vessels. In addition, poor oral hygiene can cause valvular issues for your heart. So it's really important to have good oral hygiene. Please go to my store and get the cleanse max 35 or max 14. They're at different price points because they're at different concentrations. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years every day. Teaspoon a day, every day. If you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day until everything is okay again, and then go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. I also have a great product that will help with pain. All right, it's called Super Strong Relief. If you have a muscle ache or pulled muscle, even a headache, a tension headache, or sore joints, take this Super Strong Relief, apply it to that area that's bothering you. It will reduce the pain or eliminate the pain within about 30 seconds, 60 seconds. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Super Strong Relief. It's a great way to deal with regular back aches, muscle aches, even joint pain. All right, with that, let's listen into Bloomberg here. They're on. All right, let's listen into Fox News.
David Yerman Chevron Collection.
Whoa. What's that? I just built a budgeting app in Base 44. Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Ignorant kid. Meanwhile, President Trump nominating former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh to replace Jerome Powell as the next Fed chair. This comes after the administration launched a new initiative to address drug addiction.
Alexandria Hoff joins us now with the details on both stories. Alexandria.
Yeah, it was a busy day yesterday, guys, and this announcement this morning has solidified something that the president teased last night. Kevin Warsh is somebody that the president has known for several years. He served in a economic advisory capacity during his first term. He's now been nominated by the president to succeed Jerome Powell when his term ends in May. We all know the back and forth there. Some of the frustration the president has had with Powell when it comes to interest rates. He posted this on Truth Social. I'm pleased to announce I've nominated Kevin Warsh to be chairman of the board of governors for the Federal Reserve System. He goes around, continues on to explain a bit about his background there. He then also says, I've known Kevin for a long period of time and have no doubt he will go down as one of the great Fed chairmen, maybe the best. On top of everything else, he is central casting, and he will never let you down. So the president, he did mention that last night. He was at a premiere for the First Lady's new documentary, Melania. But yesterday was a busy one because he also signed an executive order launching this initiative called the Great American Recovery. It's going to work to advise federal agencies on where to direct grant money to help fight addiction. Since President Trump's return to office, the CDC has said there's been a 20+% drop in fatal overdoses. The president says there's still work to do.
Today I'm signing a historic executive order to combat the scourge of addiction and substance abuse. We're taking a bold action to help Americans struggling with all forms of addiction so they can get the help and the support that they need to free themselves from the horrible burden of dependency.
More than 48 million Americans suffer from addiction. That's 16.8% of the population. Most do not receive treatment. Luckily, the chairs of this new initiative did. HHS Secretary R.F.K. Jr. and Catherine Burgum, wife of Interior Secretary Doug Burgum.
Recovery is not a side issue. It's an economic issue, a workforce issue, a family issue, a national security issue. And when we confront addiction with courage instead of complacency, we reclaim the promise of our country.
My message is simple: never give up hope for recovery. This initiative represents a fundamental shift from reaction to prevention, from fragmentation to coordination, from stigma to science, from short-term fixes to long-term recovery.
In his early adulthood, R.F.K. Jr. was addicted to heroin, and Burgum suffered from alcohol addiction until she became sober 22 years ago, guys.
Alex Hoff, live force at the White House. Alex, thank you. We've got more to say about the addiction, but can I just say one quick thing about Kevin Warsh? This is a significant pick, right? This guy, as President Trump said in the Truth Social, is, quote, out of central casting. But you look at who he is, 55 years old, but at 35, 20 years ago, 2006, he becomes the youngest member elected to the Federal Reserve under President Bush. In the first Trump administration, he was on the short list to be a Fed chair. Then thereafter, consideration for Treasury Secretary. But this is a Stanford undergrad, Harvard Law. This is a qualified individual with 20 years of experience in this arena. And I think when we talk about those polls we were showing about Democrats have an edge on affordability, the president and his advisors, Kevin Hassett, Howard Lutnick, talking about in 2006 it's going to take off. And Kevin Warsh is a part of this puzzle.
He almost became the Fed chair.
Yeah.
And then the president chose Powell. And so now he's going back to his original pick. Fun fact, he's married to the granddaughter of Estee Lauder. And she and her sister Erin Lauder, who are very well known in the beauty business, they started a company together and became the youngest billionaire women in the country. So both of them, husband and wife, what a team, dynamic couple.
Well, another dynamic couple would be Doug Burgum, Interior Secretary, and his wife, Catherine Burgum, who is helping the White House work on an issue that is very, very near and dear to a lot of families, addiction and the incredible struggle that so many millions of Americans go through and have family members who go through and children who go through.
Rachel Campos Duffy interviewed Catherine Burgum earlier this year on her own personal struggle with addiction. Here's a bit of that.
You struggled with addiction, and then now you're paying it forward through your organization.
Yeah, that's right. As First Lady of North Dakota, I spent 8 years trying to eliminate the stigma of the disease of addiction. It's a brain disease. So what we did for 8 years was just encourage people to talk about it, talk about how addiction is impacting.
All right, let's cover the market has opened up, so let's go over the data here. The S&P 500 is at 6,954. The VIX is trading at 17. I'm noticing that VIX is creeping up. There's that barrier, that resistance level of 7,000. That's a big one. So it's if you've been paying attention to my videos for a long time, I've been saying this in December that we're going to be bouncing around, and all of a sudden there'll be a big pop, and then there's going to be a big rally for the S&P 500. But we're at that resistance level, a major support level at about 6,750. Now, tariffs in the news, Trump keeps on talking about increasing tariffs with Canada, right? So that's going to be a problem, especially with the Gulfstream jets and decertifying certain jets that Trump's planning on doing with Canada. So there was a little bit of news that came out in Asia about this during the Asian session. So you have tariff risk, you have job risk. Now, here's the weird thing about the job report. If the job report starts to get worse, the unemployment is going up, that's actually going to be positive for the equity market, because the equity market will be expecting that the Federal Reserve will be cutting rates. All right. So it's one of those cases, bad news is good news kind of situation. Now, I still have a year-end target of 7,800 because for the S&P 500, because it's a election year. Maybe as low as 7,400. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't go above 7,800. I think it probably will, but then it'll come back down. But there's a lot that could happen this year. I mean, we're only at the end of January. It's January 30th. We have 11 months left of the year, so a lot can happen. War, in the Middle East, conflict, maybe the de-escalation of Ukraine's war. Who knows? If Russia does sign a peace agreement, that's actually going to put more barrels of oil in the Brent crude market, so prices will go down. So we'll see what happens there. Now, in terms of dollar, the dollar is weakening if you look at kind of an average trading week or average trading month. But if you look at a 10-year average or a 15-year average, we're actually near that for the value of the dollar, what the dollar's trading at, all right, compared to a basket of currencies based on the DXY. So the euro's trading at 119, the Japanese yen's trading at 154 right now. The Japanese last week, or was it last week or the beginning of the week? It was the beginning of the week where they intervened in the market and drove the yen down to about 152. There was some rumor that the Federal Reserve was also helping the BOJ, the Bank of Japan. Bassett said they weren't. So it mean reverted quite a bit and came back up from the 52 handle, the 152 handle, to about the one. Now it's at a 154 handle. All right. So it was trading before the intervention about 159. So what that basically meant is, relative to the Japanese yen, the dollar was strengthening, and the Japanese yen was weakening. The BOJ came in, they started selling dollars, buying yen, and they strengthened it. They strengthened their currency, Japanese yen. By doing that, that's going to propagate through other currencies because they're related, and weaken the dollar. So that's part of the big reason why we saw that big move in the dollar. Now you have a run up of silver and gold and then a sell off. You have major sell off in crypto, in the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is trading at 83,000. Last night it was trading as low as 81,000. So if you're in Bitcoin, you probably should get out. Because if it breaks 80, the next support level is 60. And if it breaks 60, the next support level is either probably closer to 30. So it doesn't make much sense to keep on riding this downward. I suspect this year that we're going to see major stress with Strategy, the company that's buying lots of Bitcoin. They're going to have serious stress. You'll see the cracks in their business model once Bitcoin drops past the 80 support level and starts marching to 60. Once it passes 60 and it starts marching to 30, you're going to see the bankruptcy of Strategy. Okay, with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor. This will get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate, and this will help with the health of your neurons and the connection of your neurons, so you're thinking faster and you have better memory. This is really important neurostack to take every day. So please take my advice, take the clarity factor every day and improve your brain function. Now with oil and natural gas had a big pop with this morning session. It's now trading at 4.0. It was trading at about 3.6, 3.5, came back up to 3.8 last night, and then it jumped to as high as 4.098. So natural gas is creeping upward for two reasons: war in the Middle East between the United States and Iran, and the cold spell is lingering in the United States, right? So if we don't have a war, if we don't hit Iran, the price of natural gas is going to start to drip back down. When the cold weather starts to go away, the price of natural gas is going to start to go down. The problem comes in is when the cold weather goes away and starts to warm up. All right, so natural gas wants to go down, but then we hit Iran, the natural gas will come back up. So the main driver here, short term, will be if we hit Iran, or when we hit Iran. And there'll be a big spike and then it'll come back down, right? Same thing with, a little bit different with oil. Oil is creeping up more and more, all right? It's now trading at about $65.85 a barrel. I wouldn't be surprised that we hit $66 a barrel today. When we hit Iran, it's gonna pop $4 or $5. So it's at 60. So we're looking at a 70 handle, a low 70 handle for oil when we hit Iran. I suspect that Trump is going to hit Iran. I thought he was going to hit Iran earlier, but I think he's going to actually hit Iran after this cold spell comes through. All right. And it's not because of the weather, what he's worried about. I think he's actually having the war planners work out the simulations of what is hit, what's the contingencies. So they're working it all out, you know. So it's once they, I think he's already decided to hit Iran. Once he gives them the go, it's boom, 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 boom. It's going to be shock and awe times 10. All right. So they're running the simulations. They're running the script. They're running everything to make sure that when it is a go, it's like clockwork. All right. So I think we're just waiting. And, you know, and there may be some covert things to degrade their defense systems. I wouldn't be surprised if special forces are already in Iran. you know, just kind of like roaming around. But okay, with that, there's definitely going to be movements in natural gas and oil in the short run, and then there's going to be prices are going to go up. Okay, with that, let's listen into CNBC. I think they're talking about Warsh right now.
It's going to fail, and Musk is going to mess it up. And now we've got like, hey, any minute now. Right. I will say the narrative.
SpaceX in June.
OpenAI is going from just a block man, a Mariana Trench, to suddenly, I don't know, Golden Dome. I mean, think about this.
Well, you were very concerned about it a number of weeks ago. Last year, you were going on rants about it.
Well, I'm done. It's no longer the Achilles heel. I'm taking that off the table.
So it changed. Yeah. So what changed?
The fact that they got billions of dollars in. Billions.
Tens of billions.
Tens of billions. No, I take it off the table as a principal word.
By the way, on that
facts got in the way of the story, David.
Our Kate Rooney has confirmed as well. 15 billion she is great from Amazon potentially.
Right.
So that's a huge number. Now, Amazon, you'll get back to the whole circular reasoning. Kate Rooney reporting as well. 50 billion could be the number from Amazon for OpenAI. But I think there's also a belief, perhaps in Amazon's way, that this will be a multi-trillion-dollar company, and they want to be an investor in it. Certainly, that's what you
believes. You think Jensen is any different?
No, Jensen doesn't say any different. I don't know what the number's going to end up being from NVIDIA for this round of fundraising by OpenAI.
No.
Meantime, B of A today looks at, again, Oracle 5-year CDS versus other tech credit CDS. They argue that bonds are the new regulator of AI CapEx, and that their argument is you got to slow down things a little bit.
Well, look, I felt that Zuckerberg would say something about that, but he's got all this nuclear stuff going on with energy in Louisiana, which is like the size, of Bronx?
The Hyperion is, we've all, we got to just keep that chart handy, the map they put out initially of how it covers basically most of the island of Manhattan.
But you need like a Brookfield in there building, you see, it's 30 to 50 billion. So when you hear that and you look at Oracle's balance sheet, you say, how can they do it? 30, 50 billion per data set.
Well, look, these are not data set. These are giant. These are enormous facilities. But yes, you're right. Hyperion was over $30 billion.
And I think they're only going to go up.
And co-financed a lot of it. Blue Owl was some of the equity.
Oh, there's the hard day chart today that we just referenced. Yeah.
All right. Well, when you take them on a lot, these things just get more and more expensive.
That said, Meta still has more cash in its balance sheet than it does have debt. So I'm not really against the idea of them being leasing my data center.
You bring, how much money is he making in AI? He's making fortunes. And by the way, you reach $3.5 billion with an ad, billion people in an ad. You reach half the planet with an ad. Don't you want to do that?
Yeah, but isn't it about personalizing the ads?
The thing is that we're developing AI. We're burning all this energy. We're using energy for better ads, for marketing. I don't think that's the best use of our brain power, our energy. No. There's a lot of hype about AI. All right. Breaking news here about the PMI.
5 months, all of 25, all of 24, and part of 23, we've been below 50 on Chicago PMI. But it's not 26 months because we just jumped up to 54.0. That's over 10 points higher than we were looking for. It's about 8 points higher than the rear view mirror. It's the highest level since the last time we were above 50, which was November of 2023. Now, it's hard to gauge how equities are going to view this, because if manufacturing can get some horsepower, what does that say about the Fed's easing cycle? So this might be a good news, bad news story for equities, but I would suspect at some point that the treasuries, which are already elevated, long rates have been going up, short rates going down today, curve steepened about 3 basis points today. My guess is this could steepen it even more. Squawk on the Street will return after a short break.
All righty. Let's see here. All right, let's listen to DW about the de-escalation of war with Iran.
After days of escalating threats against Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump says that he is hoping to avoid taking military action against the Iranian regime and says that he is open to new talks with Tehran on a possible nuclear deal. This is what he had to say when asked by reporters about the prospect of discussions with Iran.
I have had, and I am planning on it. Yes. We have a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now. And it would be great if we didn't have to use them.
Can you say what the message was that you shared with Iran?
Well, I told them two things. Number one, no nuclear. And number two, stop killing protesters. They're killing them by the thousands.
And on this topic of Iran and the threat of U.S. military action, I want to turn to Middle East analyst Favas Gergis, professor of international relations at the London School of Economics. Thank you so much for your time this morning. What do you take from that off-the-cuff statement from Donald Trump and at least the prospect of U.S.-Iran diplomacy?
I think there's a race against time between war and diplomacy. My take is that the odds are against a diplomatic breakthrough. Your viewers might wonder why so. Because in the past few days, President Trump has expanded his demands from Iran. He wants Iran to abolish its nuclear program, period. He wants Iran to have a limited number and a range of ballistic missiles. And he wants Iran to end all its support for its local allies and proxies in the Middle East, including Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis. And what these demands really amount to is basically asking Iran to surrender. It's humiliating the Iranian regime and probably would mean the end of the Iranian regime as we know it. And that's why I think unless there is major compromise by both sides, Iran and the United States, I doubt it very much. The march to war seems to be having momentum.
Now, I mean, we know that the U.S. has built up its naval presence in the region. Iran's foreign minister in Turkey today, Turkey offering to mediate diplomacy between the U.S. and Iran. You've talked about the American demands. If they are not met, do you believe that Trump would strike?
Yes.
I have no doubt in my mind that Donald Trump is preparing to attack Iran for a variety of reasons. First of all, that President Trump feels emboldened by the successful military operation in Venezuela. Secondly, he feels that Iran is vulnerable. Iran is weak. Iran is fragile, in particular after this wave of protests and the killing of thousands of protesters. And also, I think Donald Trump is facing domestic difficulties at home as a result of, clampdown against immigration and pushback by the Democrats and American citizens. And I think also President Trump has boxed himself in by saying he will attack Iran, since, the protesters started. So my take on it is that Donald Trump has boxed himself in, and he will most likely, he hopes, to score a major international, basically, victory as he did in Venezuela. And that's why I think the odds are in favor of President Trump ordering either a symbolic attack, but I think it will be a much bigger attack than the attacks in June against the Iranian nuclear program.
What is ultimately the biggest American goal? Is it a deal on the nuclear program? I mean, we've also heard, these anti-government protests in Iran absolutely clinging onto the statement by Trump that help is on its way. Is it about regime change? What is the American plan or Trump's plan, do you think, the ultimate goal in Iran?
Well, I think he stopped talking about really the protesters, and surely it's not about democracy. And President Trump promised the Iranian protesters that help was on the way. He did not do anything. Now the goals have changed. It's all about no nuclear weapon, nuclear arsenal. It's no ballistic missiles. It's all about ending Iran's help for its regional allies and proxies. So it's all about geopolitics. I think if you really ask me what's the overarching American and Israeli goal, is regime change. I think both Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister see this as a golden opportunity. The regime is down. The regime is starving. It's besieged. Is having major economic problems. So I think this is why I think they're hoping that, and that's why I think, and I hope I'm wrong, that President Trump basically feels that this is the moment, and he wants to seize the moment and see whether he could really basically deliver a fatal blow against the Iranian government, which I think is very risky and very unlikely that the Iranian regime will fall either by a symbolic attack or even a much bigger attack.
Put this into the bigger context for us, because I mean, we have seen American attempts at regime change in the region, and they have, I think it's fair to say, not played out well. How do you think that other major powers in the region react if the U.S. does indeed choose to make a military move against the Iranian regime?
Well, I really think this is a key question now, because you mentioned Turkey. Turkey has emerged as a key mediator between the United States and Iran. Neither Turkey, nor Saudi Arabia, nor the United Arab Emirates, nor Oman, nor Qatar won war, because they realize, the Middle East does not really need another war in the Middle East. This would be catastrophic. Iran is not, Venezuela is not even Iraq. Any major turmoil in Iran would have catastrophic consequences.
Looks like there was some sort of connection issue with Rumble. So let me just see if that, hopefully it's still working. All right, let's play CNBC while I do some
They're making me
checks here.
and I don't want to go. Right? I don't want.
We had a good time. We had an
Yeah, can we do Saturday show?
okay, swap on the screen.
protesters. You're killing them by the thousands.
South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds is a member of the Armed Services Committee, and he joins us now. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. I cannot imagine a world where Iran would willingly give up their nuclear ambitions as they're actively trying to rebuild their program right now. So the president has been presented with this full slate of options. As a member of the Armed Services Committee, what do you think the president should do when it comes to Iran?
Well, good morning. The president has a number of options available to him. He's got a tough job in this particular case because the Iranians have always decided that, number one, they will not rest until they destroy Israel. And second of all, they have made it very clear that we are the great enemy. And so I personally don't believe that we're going to have a safe world or that the Middle East is going to be safe as long as this particular regime is in power. The question that the president will have to wrestle with is which of the military options is the one that he thinks is best? And can he avert using military options by putting them in a position that they realize that they're not going to be around for very long? He's got a tough job here. We're going to support him. He's done some really good things to try to bring peace around the rest of the world, and we're hopeful that he'll be able to find peace in the Middle East as well. And this is a huge job, but he's got the resources. The Pentagon, the Department of War's responsibility is to provide him with as many options as they possibly can, and then to allow him to pick what he believes to be the best path moving forward. We will be supportive of the president in this foreign relations discussion that he's going to have.
And the president says that he does want to negotiate with Iranian officials. Do you put any stock in the fact that this could end in talks, or do you anticipate military action?
Look, there's always a hope that something might happen. The best thing that could happen would be if the people of Iran were in a position to actually choose a new leadership team, a new path forward. Eventually, that's what I believe will have to happen. Under this regime, these folks don't care about killing people, and most certainly don't have the right plan for the Middle East. There's no question about that. President Trump clearly has an opportunity here. We're going to be supportive of him. I mean, no matter where I go in South Dakota, people want us to support the president. They want us to find a path forward, and they believe that the president has done the right things. And in fact, we've got a budget program going on right now that we're going to be working on trying to fund government for the rest of the year. And when we talk to folks back in the state, they want us to get our work done. And that's kind of what the president is sharing with us. It's the reason why he's been working diligently over the last couple of days to try to find the right path forward to keep the government open. So I give him a lot of credit for having negotiated with Democrats on this particular issue, trying to find the right path, and at the same time, he's got his hands full with these crazies in Iran right now.
Yeah, how do you see this deal playing out over the weekend?
Well, we're going to have a shutdown. I think that's pretty clear, and the reason is just the logistics of working our way to get the House back in time. The best path that we could have had would have been to have passed all 6 of the remaining bills the way they came from the House. The Democrats indicated very clearly they were not going to do that. They'll pass 5 of them, but they want to continue a resolution on the 6th for a short period of time. I think the president has made the right move by saying, look, I want to keep government open. And if you really don't like the 6th bill on Homeland Security, fine, we'll give you a 2-week time period in which you can make recommendations. But I think the Democrats are going to come back with basically the same product that we've got right now. I mean, it's got body cameras in it. It's got additional money in it for additional training for ICE agents and so forth. But we've got to support ICE. We've got to be able to support the people that are on the ground. The president wants to do that. And we're going to be supportive of the alternative that he's offered and made the deal with the Democrats on. Well, it takes time in the Senate because you've got to have unanimous consent of every member in the Senate if you're going to slow down the process. In other words, you've got to have 30 hours of debate before you can even get on the bill, unless you have consent. Well, we've got a couple guys that have said we'd like to add a few more things onto this thing, and while we don't want to make it into a Christmas tree, there's some guys on our side of the aisle that want to have some amendments put in, and now the Democrats are going to want to throw in a couple of amendments as well. It's a matter of whether or not we can get through that in a timely fashion. But there's going to be a shutdown for a short period of time. You still got to get back to the House, and they'd have to agree with the changes that the Senate would make.
It begs the question why you guys don't sync up your schedules better. That's not a question for you necessarily.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Can there be some sort of legislation on syncing up those schedules? Also, ICE has already funded the Big Beautiful Bill for several years, but apparently there will be a partial government shutdown, as you predicted, and let's hope the emphasis will be on the word short when it comes to this one.
Look, I'll tell you what, I wanted to get back in South Dakota for the Black Hills Stock Show in Rapid City, South Dakota. Looks like we're going to be here instead, but the folks out there understand it. They want us to get our job done. And
sure, of course. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I apologize for the little broadband issues here, but hopefully it's fixed. Please go to my store and get the complete multivitamin. This multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly. When your cells perform properly, your tissues, your organ system perform properly, and it slows down the aging process. This is easy to digest, so please go to my store and get the complete multivitamin. And take it with either the Veggie Cap probiotic or the powdered probiotic. I prefer the powder because I take all these different powders like the collagen and the gladiator barley and the boomer boost, the lignans, and the probiotics. So it depends on how you want to take it. But both are very high quality. And what they will do is just bring down inflammation at the gut level, improve the immune system at the gut level, allow you to absorb your nutrients better, your metabolism will improve, your communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain will improve, your skin will improve, and your brain function will improve. You'll be able to sleep better, you'll be able to concentrate, you're consolidating memory when you have better sleep. So please go to my store, get the probiotics. Good health starts at the gut, so please go to my store, get the probiotics, and stack it with the multivitamin. That's the foundation for my anti-aging core protocol. Also, get the deodorants for males and females. You can get it in citrus. You can also get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural, very high quality. It's dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, and it'll help to detoxify your body. When you detoxify your body regularly, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. And since we're in the cold season, you need to boost up your immune system. Get the magnesium and zinc. This will also help to boost up the brain function. And get the vitamin C and magnesium. Helps with skin health, helps boost up your immune system and brain function. You can stack them together. So please go to my store, use discount 5, all caps, discount number 5, you save $5. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos.
Good, because they don't have to worry about the Fed being tight. Look, we got a hotter PPI report today.
Yep.
So are we going to get a Kevin Warsh that's loyal to the president, or Kevin Warsh that is loyal to what he's been saying for the last decade, or worrying about inflation?
I mean, I certainly hope for the U.S. economy over the long term that he does what's right for policy, not necessarily for a politician of any party. And we're going to see that. We're going to see that very, very soon, assuming he gets confirmed, assuming Tillis allows that to go through. We're going to know in a few months which Kevin Warsh we have. But I have to think anyone who would want that chair wants to have a legacy of doing the right thing for the economy.
Yeah, I mean, he did write, to Warsh's credit, he wrote an entire paper a few years ago called Ode to Fed Independence.
Yeah.
So he understands that. Mohammed, this is someone that you know very well. I think that you're pretty pleased here with the pick, aren't you?
I am. I think we are getting someone with deep expertise, wide experience. He's a good communicator. He's committed to reform the Fed in order to strengthen it and in order to protect its political independence. So I think we're getting someone, as was just said, that is very suited for him. Now, he inherits a difficult situation. He inherits a divided Fed in terms of views. He inherits a Fed that's defending itself against political interference. And he inherits a Fed that has been overly data dependent. So the hope here is that he can bring a strategic view to the Fed based on how he feels about productivity. And with that, he can start getting the Fed to coalesce on a forward-looking strategy for monetary policy.
Yeah. Given your view, Mohammed, how long do you believe it will be before he clashes with the president who nominated him?
So I think that a lot will depend, David, what happens between now and May. We're not going to get any rate cuts between now and May, and I suspect we'll get a weaker labor market. So there may be rate cuts that occur then, and that's what the market expects, in fact. I think what he will do early on is try to set out three things. One is I want to stop the mission creep of the Fed. Two, I want to have a theory of balance sheet. We grew to over 9 billion, as Sarah said, we came back to 6.5 billion. It's not, we have a neutral interest rate, we don't have a neutral balance sheet. And he will push for work on this notion of what is the optimal balance sheet. His feeling, and my feeling too, and many feeling, is that blowing up the balance sheet was very successful for asset prices, but wasn't so good for the economy. And in fact, it has distorted market functioning. And then the third thing he's going to do is go to the issue of communication.
Margins. I made the strong demand for the new iPhone.
In order to protect the Fed. So that, I think that's what he's going to see. And I suspect that the president will be happy that the Fed is being reformed and modernized.
On the communication side, Rebecca, not a fan of forward guidance necessarily. Would you expect him to pull back on pressers, overall Fed speak in general? Which is our lifeblood here.
I know. You guys are going to hate my answer. I think there is too much Fed speak. And look, sophisticated viewers of CNBC understand who's an FOMC voter, who's a former member versus a current member. But the general public doesn't necessarily understand that. And so the risk with the amount of Fed communication we have today, not just sitting Fed members, but all the formers, is that you could have a couple people speaking every day, and it can actually create noise rather than signal. So I actually support Warsh on that point. I do think the balance sheet's going to be harder to achieve than it sounds, right? There's a reason the Fed stopped quantitative tightening late last year, because they were worried about it having some volatility effects on the financial markets and the banks. And so how do you force the balance sheet lower without that occurring? It's easy to blow up the balance sheet. It's a lot harder to deflate it smoothly without any unintended consequences.
You know, as somebody who's been in the macro world, but also in the stock market world, Rebecca, I mean, he's similar. He's been working with Stan Druckenmiller for a long time. He knows his way around the stock market. I'm just curious how you think that may inform the way he goes about doing the job.
I mean, I think it's really interesting that in recent writings and speeches, Kevin has put a lot of emphasis on helping Main Street. And so, look, the Gini coefficient, that measure of inequality in the U.S., is near a 6-year high right now. And that is partly because low interest rates and liquidity have helped lift the equity market and created that wealth for those who own stocks. So if he wants to help Main Street, first of all, is the right tool? Are policy rates the right tool to do that? Probably not. But secondly, does that mean you keep rates high and limit stock gains? That doesn't sound like necessarily a good strategy to help the economy. So I'm curious how he's going to interpret what he's suggested it would be a goal for himself.
Yeah, on the balance sheet point that you made, Mohammed, if we start seeing more material shrinking of the balance sheet, isn't that bad for stocks?
It may be bad for stocks, but the alternative is worse. I think we've got to be careful that we've conditioned the financial system to over-rely on central bank liquidity. And in the process, we are distorting market functioning. We are fueling zombie companies. So I do think there's an issue about how big the balance sheet should be. I agree with Rebecca.
So much over-reliance on the Federal Reserve.
Every time we blow it up. Remember, we went from 2 trillion before the global financial crisis to 4, to 6, to 9. And we forgot that these balance sheet operations are to normalize markets, to fix market failures.
I don't know how the president's going to feel if it's going to be if his new policy of shrinking the balance sheet is going to hurt the equity market. And ultimately, I mean, I know you don't think it has an impact on the real economy, but equities do have an impact on the real economy.
So one of the most disappointing outcomes is that so-called wealth effect. You push asset price artificially higher, we feel wealthier, and we go on spending hasn't been strong enough. Let me go also back to the communication point. I completely agree with Rebecca. We have too much communication. The result of that is forward policy guidance has become less effective, and there are studies that show that the Fed has been a contributor to market instability as opposed to a repressor of volatility, which is what the whole point of more communication is. So the Fed had promised us a review of the communication policy. We haven't gotten it yet, and I think we're going to see that under a Warsh Fed.
I'm actually happy about that. So just we can talk more about AI. By the way, real quickly on that.
You want to talk about the Fed?
Grappling with the labor market and what the impact of AI is going to be. It's going to have to be a very difficult job for a Fed chair, not to mention all the governors.
Well, and also because we don't know exactly what's ahead of us, how much productivity growth, how many job cuts. I mean, Waller came out with a statement today defending his bias for a cut yesterday and highlighting the labor market softness, which he and others have suggested is at least partly on companies putting money into AI, needing to offset those cost increases with some personnel hits. And so how much of that is ahead? We could get, as Mohammed said earlier, we could get rate cuts in the second half of this year, not because anyone's trying to please the president, but because the labor market ends up softening more than expected right now.
The first of many conversations, Mohammed. Rebecca, thanks so much.
Thank you.
For more, let's bring in our next guest, who was among the final four in consideration for the job, and for a time was widely viewed as the frontrunner. NEC Director Kevin Hassett joins us now. Director Hassett, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
Are you disappointed that you didn't get it?
No, I've got my dream job. You guys have been seeing me say that for months. I think President Trump made a great choice, and I'm really thrilled and humbled by all the kind of things he said about me. You know, the bottom line is that the economic team in this White House was Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick and myself. I think we've been hitting on all cylinders, and it's a really bad time to change teams. You don't change quarterbacks when you're way ahead. And I really have high regard for Kevin, and we're going to put every effort that we have into getting him confirmed as soon as possible so that we can get the Fed moving in the right direction.
You don't wish you did a little worse in all those, television appearances? And the president basically said that he's keeping you where you were so that you can communicate because you had outdone yourself on the communication around the administration's economic policy.
I think we're a very close White House, and we're really thrilled that we're staying where we are.
What is your understanding of what Warsh's position and argument and final pitch was for the president?
Oh, I'll let Kevin discuss that himself, and his views on monetary policy and so on. I can say that when the president and I talked about me being a candidate, it was really all about, if I left, then what would happen to NEC and so on. At one point, the president said, well, you didn't ask me for the job. You never asked me for the job. And the point is, I said, well, I want to do what you want me to do, sir. And that's really the conversation is, well, I want you to stay at NEC. But that's pretty much the conversation.
He didn't demand that you would lower interest rates?
We did. Yeah, I guess if he had asked me to be Fed chair, then at that point that conversation might have been done.
But people are wondering, what if there are assurances made. I mean, the president has not been shy about what he wants to see for monetary policy.
You'll have to talk to Kevin about that.
What about this idea that we've been sort of dissecting Warsh's views in the past, and more recently he has talked about how the Fed should lower interest rates, but also shrink the balance sheet. Do you agree with that?
Well, again, I'm going to let him speak for monetary policy, but the thing I can say is that it's our belief in the White House that we're having a massive positive supply shock, the likes of which we haven't seen since the late 90s. And that against that backdrop, you can have high growth without high inflation. And I think that the data keep showing us that that's the truth. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off the Fed. In fact, I could sort of say that our job as we look forward to the State of the Union and possible tax legislation this year, our job is to make the Fed's job easy, to lower the deficit, lower the trade deficit, be fiscally responsible, but also keep the supply side forces moving.
I don't know. Does the data really show that we can get high growth without inflation? We got a PPI report this morning that was pretty hot, 3%, higher than expectations of 2.7%. Core rose to 3.3%.
Right, the PPI number is a little bit different right now than what we're seeing from the CPI. The CPI over the last 3 months, the annual rate was lower than 2. I think that right now we're seeing materials prices, gold and so on, are up quite a bit, in part because of all the investment that's happening for artificial intelligence and data centers and so on. And the bottom line is that if we're getting a big supply side shock, then it puts downward pressure on inflation. So if people are taking all of these costly materials and consuming them, then it would be a concern for inflation. But if they're going into things that are increasing average supply, it's less of a concern.
So you think the inflation, the consumer price inflation numbers will do what? Go down to 2% target this year?
Well, the three month, if you annualize the last 3 months, it's like 1.8 or something. And so maybe, it'll fluctuate, but we're not far from target.
So do you think the Fed made a mistake this week not cutting interest rates?
Yeah, I do. The bottom line is that we're growing. Think about it. GDP now is what, 5.4%, and that's with a government shutdown taking off 1.5%. So really, you're looking at a number like 7, and we're talking about are we at this side or that side of 2%. And so this idea that the Phillips curve constrains the Fed to always hammer when there's good news is being disproven by the data.
Wait, okay. Can you talk me through how we're at 7% growth?
Oh, I'm saying, well, the GDP now is at 5.4.
Oh, you did Atlanta Fed tracking,
yeah. And the Council of Economic Advisors at our White House tells us that the negative effect of the government shutdown is around 1.5. And so the 5.4 is despite the negative effect of the government shutdown. So if we hadn't had the government shutdown, the number would even be higher than that.
So you expect that to play out for the rest of the year? I mean, we're also expecting some of the benefits of the big beautiful bill. I know that the tax refunds are supposed to be pretty high this year. You think that can be added into the economy as well with
right.
no
Well,
inflation?
We're seeing it already this year. It's not just waiting for the refunds next year, but the capital spending boom, equipment spending boom, because of the expensing that we put in, is really happening with all the commitments to onshore activity, in part because of the tariff policy. Those are being realized. We've got a count of about 35 groundbreakings for new giant factories in the fall and in early winter. And so the capital spending boom, the supply side increase is happening already. And now what's going to happen in this year is that people should file for their taxes as soon as possible, because there's going to be a heck of a lot of refunds for people who earn tips or overtime.
Those factory, moves are in addition to all the data centers, Kevin, that are being built around the country as well?
Yeah, that's right. Like, so for example, Eli Lilly is onshoring a lot of their production in Virginia. We have a team that keeps a list of the groundbreakings, so it's really quite striking how much production is moving to the U.S.
Yeah, because we've been focused on those manufacturing job numbers, which have not yet shown significant increases. In fact, the opposite.
Right, they've been a little bit level, but I think it's in part because the people haven't turned the machines on yet. They're building the factories in the fall.
Just to follow up on Warsh and his potential the hearings. I mean, Senator Tillis right now is saying it's not going to happen until you resolve this investigation of Fed Chair Powell. Are you advising the president, or is there any expectation on your point, I should say, that this will get resolved quickly?
I think that it is an issue that should get resolved quickly, but I can also say that the White House is highly, highly confident that Kevin Warsh is a great nominee, and that he should be confirmed as soon as possible. And that every single resource we have at our disposal is behind him and behind that outcome.
Do you expect, if he does get in, that you'll be working more closely with him at the Fed?
I've known Kevin for decades. Secretary Bessent has known him for decades. I think that it'll be a great working relationship.
I mean, it is strange, though, to think that if you really think that the GDP is around 7%, that arguing for lower interest rates in that environment, especially with inflation above target.
That's if you think that the Phillips curve is what's driving growth right now, but that's not what it is. It's not like a demand side growth, it's a supply side growth. And again, there's a historic precedent for this. In the 90s, when the internet started to increase productivity for companies all around, like every corner of the economy, then Alan Greenspan saw that growth was high, and he didn't try to slow it down because he recognized that it was supply side growth. And I think that, of course, you have to be data dependent, you have to watch the numbers, but if we continue to have the supply side boom that we've seen in the first half of this year, then there'll be plenty of room for the Fed to lower rates.
Why do you think interest rates are moving up right now? The 10-year yield is marching toward 4.30, 30-year yield, near 4.90. I mean, yes, we're seeing a little bit on the short end lower, but pretty steady steepening here.
against the dollar.
Well, I mean, the day-to-day fluctuations are difficult to pin on one thing or the other, but the bottom line is that interest rates, one of the reasons why interest rates should be going down, across all durations, is that we reduced the year-over-year fiscal deficit by about $600 billion. With reduced spending, we've cut federal government employment by about 270,000 workers. We've got the tariff revenue, of course, and we've got the growth dividend on tax revenue. And so when there's a big reduction in the fiscal deficit, then you go back to Lavak's famous paper at the Fed, then you should see interest rates going down. And so I think that's basically the main current right now, is that we're being super fiscally responsible, which will take pressure off the Fed and make it easier to lower rates.
Yeah. What about the balance sheet? There seems to be a belief, based on all of his statements, of course, from Warsh, that he's going to reduce that balance sheet and fairly significantly. Would you agree with that as a policy?
Well, again, I'm not going to disagree or agree with. Right now, Kevin Warsh is our nominee, and he can speak for himself on monetary policy, and we respect the independence of the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder if that has to do with the fact that the dollar's rallying. How about the dollar? What is the stance here? Because the president seemed to bless the weaker dollar this week, but then Treasury Secretary Besson told me that we have a strong dollar policy. So what is exactly the attitude from the White House on the dollar?
Secretary Besson is a spokesperson for the dollar policy, and a strong dollar has been the U.S. policy of every Treasury Secretary since I've been working in Washington for more than 30 years. And there are a lot of good economic reasons for it to want a strong dollar. And
so why do you think it's been so weak, the dollar?
Again, I think that things fluctuate, and but in the end, if we're an economy that has its act together, isn't running runaway inflation as it did under Joe Biden, is being fiscally responsible, then we should expect to see a strong dollar. But a strong dollar doesn't happen because somebody says so. A strong dollar happens when the fiscal policy actions support that.
Yeah, we had a guest who was referencing Fannie and Freddie, given Warsh's sort of expertise in that area. I'm just curious, because we do expect that there is going to be a significant reorganization, the taking public as well. Can you give us any updates in terms of where the administration stands on its policy there, and or whether Mr. Warsh would play a role in that as Fed chair?
I haven't discussed with the president what the role of the Fed would be, but we've had continued meetings with the inner circle of senior advisors and the president, with Wall Street leaders to talk about next steps, but I have no news to break on that. It's still something that's being studied very carefully.
Well, we certainly appreciate you joining us to talk through the big announcement today and everything that you're working on at the White House. Kevin Hassett, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
A whole lot more ahead on the story of the day, including an interview with current Fed Governor Myron with his first reaction to the news about Warsh. No juice for Apple this morning, despite a strong top and bottom line beat. We'll talk to an analyst about what the street is focusing on from that number, with the Dow down about 190. And Squawk on the Street continues on this Friday.
I don't know a lot about Warsh, but he does seem to be a little bit more of a hawk than a dove in terms of Fed policy. So I'm a little surprised that Trump actually picked him. I thought it was going to be Rick Ritter. We're going to go to Bloomberg here, but before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Zeolite will help to bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, and you'll be able to urinate those chemicals out within 6 to 8 hours. And when you're detoxifying your body regularly, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. Super important. And also, your brain will work better. Vitamin D3, super important to take during the winter season. If you haven't noticed, we have a cold spell in the United States. Get the vitamin D3, take it every day. It's dual purpose. It's a gene expression cofactor, so it's going to help your cells to perform properly. It helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Vitamin D3 will help with bone density and even cardiovascular health. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. It's dual purpose. And oh, by the way, it helps to reduce the severity of that thing that was happening in 2020. Omega-3. Omega-3 will bring down inflammation, help you to control your lipid profile, reduce plaque formation, and reduce overclotting. You need to take omega-3 every day for your cardiovascular health. Very important. And vitamin B complex. If you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking vitamin B complex. Why? The first 4 B vitamins will improve the health of your mitochondria because the first 4 B vitamins in this complex will help the electron transport chain to make ATP, so you'll have more energy. When your cells have more energy, they can perform properly. Vitamin B complex also has other B vitamins that will help with your cellular metabolism, so your tissues perform properly. And it has vitamin B12 that will protect your neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin B complex, protect your neurons, and rev up that metabolism. Use discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Bloomberg is joining us live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. And again, the little bit of a sell-off here in the marketplace with the S&P off 30 points and the NASDAQ off 150 points. That's 0.6%. Let's check in on these markets with Nora Yusuf, Managing Director at RBC Wealth Management. Nora, I mean, we start 2026, pretty solid performance here, but really 2025 was, you made money in equities, you made money in bonds, high single-digit total returns. Commodities certainly made money for you. What's your setup for your clients in 2026?
Well, what I'm reminding people of is the big elephant in the room. Okay, we've got a midterm election year, which usually means the market tends to have modest returns during years like this. We're looking at
no shit, Sherlock.
Cycle. And our analysts found that in the 23 previous.
This is the reason why I say 7,800.
Elections. So our message is don't get too complacent, be sure to have rebalanced, and remember, if we do get some sort of pullback, it is part of the normal cycle. But I'll also point out the average rebound from the midterm low to the following year's high is on average about 48%. So what I'm telling people is to stay vigilant. Volatility, buying opportunities here, and during market volatility periods, let's just remember this year, you don't want to let the market dictate your outcome, but rather just let it inform your strategy.
So the move so far we've seen in January seems to be in line with consensus. Bank of America in a survey said that managers are positioned for higher stocks, higher commodities, and lower dollar. But there is a risk also when it's such a crowded trade and they're very vulnerable to risk sentiment and to sudden shifts. How do you advise investors against that? I mean, do you tell them, go ahead, be a contrarian, or just stick to the herd?
Well, here we are on the last trading day of the month, and the January barometer theory suggests that as the S&P 500 goes in June.
A little bit of technical issues there with the old so we'll have to see if we can reconnect there. I think what you just mentioned here, the January barometer suggests that if the S&P is positive in the month of January, the market will likely trend higher for the rest of the year, about 86% of the time. And just for the month of January this year, the S&P is up 1.3%.
It's great. Like we're the last.
It's going to go up. It's going to go up, but it's not going to be like it was last year. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver drops and lozenges. You can get it in blueberry, cherry flavor, honey and lemon, manuka honey, and vitamin C orange splash. I got a wide variety of drops and lozenges. Please go to my store. Get them. They will help to boost up your immune system. Right when you have that throat irritation, take them right away. But if you're around someone that's not feeling so well because of the cold season, take them prophylactically. Super important. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lozenges and the drops. All right, let's listen to...
There's a lot of skepticism around there. And what I like to remind people is, sure, we get all caught up in the quantitative analysis and the data, which of course is important, But we have to remember that the market is a very emotional place. And so with the skepticism, we really don't mind that. After all, bull markets are born in pessimism, they rise in skepticism and die in euphoria. So dare I say, bring on the skeptics.
Are markets, you talk about being emotional, are markets under or overpricing the odds that the Fed leadership might actually change the rate path?
Well, with the Fed, what I'll point out there is that the Fed is made up of 12 votes, 12 of them to be exact, not just the Fed chair's vote. And what we're urging people to do is, listen, let's just focus on what we can control as it relates to the Fed, which is taking the opportunity here to potentially lock in some cash at these still elevated rates before this window of opportunity continues to close. And with the Fed pausing this month, it's really buying us some more time here to make some important decisions, potentially with that cash.
Nora, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking a few moments to chat with us. Nora Yusuf, Managing Director, RBC Wealth Management, joining us at the Zoom thing. And looking at these markets here, again, a little bit of red on the screen, about 0.4% decline in both the S&P and the Dow. We're doing more than NASDAQ. NASDAQ's down 145 points at 0.6%. But we'll call out.
All right, let's do a market update here. The natural gas is trading at 4.13, so it keeps on trending upward. It's a cold season and the potentiality of it in Iran. Oil is trading at 65.67. It's probably, as we get to 2 o'clock today, it's going to probably drift a little bit lower. But because we're going into the weekend and then, and then the Monday session, we're probably going to hear on the weekend some more rumblings of hitting Iran, and there's probably going to be a pop in oil. That's what I suspect. But if there seems to be some sort of peace agreement that takes place, some sort of understanding between Trump and the Ayatollah, then maybe energy will go down. But I doubt that will happen. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the olive leaf extract. This is dual purpose. It's going to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Super important to take. Brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. It's really simple. Take it every day. It's dual purpose. And digestive enzyme complex. This will help you to break up your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, reduce the load on your pancreas so your pancreas is healthier. You'll ease with the digestion. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients. This has bromelain in it, so it's going to help to reduce clots because it's fibrinolytic. And the glycoproteins in here will help to break up the proteolytic enzymes in here will break up the glycoproteins, and that will help you during the winter season. Super important. So this is dual purpose, right? Primarily helps with your digestion, but it gets rid of some things that you may happen to catch during the winter season. All right. What's next? What else is going on in the world? Let's listen into the weather here because there's a lot going on with the weather.
Rain-X water repellency wiper blades. Apply the magic of Rain-X to your windshield.
TFM Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson. The Brain Shakes. January 31st. Watch only on DAZN.
All right, let's continue on here live now from Fox and bring into the conversation Fox weather meteorologist Jane Menard. Jane, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. What can you tell us about how frigid it is in the southeastern and what we should expect this weekend?
Oh, let me tell you, I mean, it's cold now, and it's dangerously cold, especially for the hundreds of thousands of folks that are still without power across parts of northern Louisiana, Mississippi, up into Tennessee. So that's still a growing concern as we head into this weekend. But of course, as the chatter goes, right, with one storm exiting, here comes the next. And I've got Wilmington, North Carolina up here because we are looking at a nor'easter that is expected to develop as we head into this weekend. There are a couple questions that we still need to iron out the details to before we give a full and complete answer to how this plays out. But we're locking in the forecast for spots like North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, Wilmington, where yes, we do in fact have snow on the way. So what's going on? Well, this extreme cold is set to move into the weekend, and it's going as far south as the Sunshine State. Come Sunday morning, we're talking record low temperatures as far south as Miami-Dade County, and could be challenging records down there from the early 1900s. We're talking below 32 degrees, wind chills that could be in the single digits, in the teens across the Sunshine State. So with a cold air mass like that locked into the eastern seaboard, well, we have this big trough. And with this trough that's going to spread that cold air south, this upper level low transfers down to the surface. That off the mid-Atlantic coast is where our storm is expected to develop. Now, it's going to develop quickly. It is going to strengthen quickly. And because we have higher confidence in winter impacts from the Eastern Carolinas up into Virginia, it has a lot to do with just proximity. And also, too, knowing the fact that, yes, at that point in time, models have a very good handle on that this storm is going to happen. With that storm closer to the coast, of course, that's something that we're going to be watching as we look downstream. The farther away this low tracks as it goes up to the northeast from New England, the lower the impacts will be. But we still don't know exactly if the storm is going to track in that direction. Trends have been in that direction, that you can see the confluence of our models and pretty high agreement that we have this powerful coastal low developing off the Carolinas. So that's what brings the big snow footprint for eastern North Carolina into eastern Virginia, big wave and wind impacts across parts of the Outer Banks into the Delmarva. But as we track this area of low pressure up to the north, this benchmark, and if you live in the Northeast, you've heard us talk about this before, the 40-70 line, where that cross-section meets, a storm of this magnitude that passes over that blue dot is typically what is historic in terms of the most impactful snow events for the I-95. So if we cut west of that benchmark, that's usually when things transition to rain and then we get skunked, right? And then it always becomes the big bust potential. But there is a bust potential here if the track of this low cuts east of that benchmark, and models have been trending in that direction. So that would end up being, I think, for so many millions of people who are still digging out from this weekend's past winter storm, this would be the best case scenario, I think, just for limiting the overall impacts. Doesn't mean we wouldn't see snow, doesn't mean that we wouldn't see wind, but I think that, blockbuster snow, that window is starting to dwindle for our major cities on the I-95. That we're going to keep our eyes on eastern New England, coastal Mass, where we could still sneak in there, perhaps a decently plowable snow and some pretty powerful wind. But there it is, our first snow forecast for this weekend nor'easter with the bullseye in the Carolinas. The proximity of that area of low pressure, the quicker it develops, the stronger it becomes. We're talking some pretty hefty snow bands for Raleigh, perhaps over the Outer Banks, upwards of 8 to 12 inches Saturday through Sunday. This is a quick mover. So by Monday, this is going to be up and out of here, but still will leave its mark for the eastern seaboard.
And Jane, it's so fascinating to look at some of these models, and obviously has come so far along the technology for this, but it's interesting, you're looking at 40-70 mark, and if it goes obviously a wayward from there, we might not get as much snow. It's going to take some time to kind of narrow in the focus on if it does hit that bullseye. Why does it take so long? Why is it kind of a little bit all over the board until then?
Well, what's interesting? So, models, they really don't start ingesting real-time observations until about 2, sometimes 3 days out from when the event is expected to happen. So here we sit here Wednesday night, expecting to see the storm develop late Saturday. So we're still a good 3-4 days away from the onset of this storm. And so right now, models are quite literally picking a point randomly and running with it. And so there's still some credence to it, but it's really once we start ingesting that real-time observation data, which by the way, comes from like airplanes and drop zones from the National Weather Service. Once we get those real-time readings from the atmosphere for models to start to latch onto and do some real-time forecasting, that doesn't happen until about 3 days out, which is why I always say, trust us here at Fox Weather with your Fox Weather app, but really make sure you're zeroing in on that 3-day forecast because that's where we have the highest confidence and certainty. And then it'll be interesting because even with this snow forecast and the benchmark, I'll be perfectly honest with you, as a meteorologist, sometimes it's not until the event has started. We call this nowcasting, right? And this is something that we're going to be doing all weekend long here. We have extended team coverage to get you through this weekend. I'll be on in the afternoons, and I'm going to be looking at that area of low pressure as it begins to pull up the coast. I know where that benchmark is. I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to be looking to see, like, okay, how close are we to the benchmark? And as it continues to work its way through, are we looking at it at a near miss east, or could we get close enough to spread more of that snow closer to the coast? So it's too close for comfort, right? I think for a lot of folks are like, wait, we want to know right now. Believe me, I want to tell you right now. But for the Carolinas, preparations need to begin because that is the most locked in feature of this forecast.
We'll see exactly how much snow they get in the Northeast.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. This will help with gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. It'll also help the health of your mitochondria. It has flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans to help with that gene expression. And you'll also bring down inflammation and recover quicker after your workout. And you can take the Myotrol separately, or you can stack it with the Gladiator Barley. Now, Gladiator Barley is a high-density barley that's a micronutrient. This is a month's supply. You take it every day, and it's dual purpose. It's going to help you to build muscle, so make sure you do some resistance training. It'll bring down inflammation, so your recovery time is quicker. But it also helps by detoxifying your body and soaking up free radicals. And that's going to help slow down the aging process. It's going to help to boost up the immune system, help with the endocrine system, help with brain function, help with the cardiovascular system. It's really important from an anti-aging perspective to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and detoxify your body. So please go to my store and get the Gladiator Barley. And again, like I said, you can take it separately or you can stack it with the Myotrol. Now, if you are an athlete, you will also benefit from this for gaining strength relative to the sport that you're in. So take the Myotrol and the Gladiator Barley, do resistance training, gain that strength. But even if you're not an athlete, you're going to benefit from this. This is the reason why I keep on saying a key component of anti-aging is to understand geriatric medicine and also understand sports medicine. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Gladiator Barley and the Myotrol.
Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg News with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Right now, you have 9 of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500 lower. Material stocks, the biggest drag right now. The leaders, the individual leaders in the index, Deckers, Outdoor, and SanDisk after their results. Then Apple, they delivered record quarterly sales, better than anticipated forecasts for the period. They also cited rising memory prices, and they said they're also facing some supply chain constraints. So the stock right now down 1%. Verizon, the biggest wireless provider in the U.S., adding 616,000 new subscribers in the fourth quarter. Verizon shares right now up 8.5%. Well, market participants today seem to be saying that the Fed chair nominee, Kevin Warsh, doesn't support deep rate cuts. Jay Hatfield at Infrastructure Capital, not a fan of the Fed chair nominee.
MAGA people call people like Warsh a rhino. So he doesn't care about the middle class, cares about his 2% target, it's completely made up, and has shown no contrition about his approach during the great financial crisis.
Right now, the S&P 500 down 11, the Dow down 141. The NASDAQ 100, 112 points lower. It's Friday, so we'll do this. Shaken or stirred, Paul, Isabel?
Absolutely shaken.
Okay.
I'll pick stirred.
Stirred. Good for you. I never had one. Martini sales up. Some restaurants and bars reporting sales increases of 30% or more in martini sales over the past few months. They're dominating venues apparently from New York to London, even as overall alcohol consumption is on the decline. So the bars and restaurants like them because they're easy to make and the margins are absolutely incredible.
Tito's on the rocks. It's simple.
Dan, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah.
I am more of a Cabernet fan, but again, yeah. I'm shaking when you go down that path.
All right, just checking. We check the markets for you all day and other stuff right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Isabel, Paul.
It's official, John. I'm taking the ferry home today. 60-minute wait to Penn Station.
Isabel, you're my witness. I'm offering to give him a lift in my car in the Subaru.
No, you go home. No, you go home.
But, you're going to be facing ice flows in the river.
I'm looking forward to it, actually. All right, John, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel Lee sitting in for Scarlett Fu. I'm Paul Sweeney live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. Big week for tech earnings here. The Apple numbers came out last night. I thought they were, really good. So what does the stock market do? Down 1% in the stock there today. I've been doing the stock market thing for 4 years. No idea how it works. Dan Ives does Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities. Joins us live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Dan, what did you make of the quarter last night?
I mean, that was a staggering quarter in terms of what we saw on iPhone, specifically in terms of China. China, massive tailwind, services strong. I'd almost say best case scenario that you could have seen. The stock performance today, I'd say it's a massive head scratcher. I mean, this is one where I think this stock should be up 5 to 8% relative, to what they perform and the guidance. But I think it also just comes down to, we talk about it so much in the show, right? Is that what's the AI strategy? What's the monetization? Show us the playbook. That's not Cupertino. That's not their DNA. And I think that's why the stock's it's a little Larry David in terms of the reaction.
So how has it been their AI push? Because they have faced concerns and they've really lagged behind their mega cap tech peers.
Look, I mean, they watched AI from the stands, and I think that's been disappointing to many, including us, because you have the biggest install base in the world. You have 1.5 billion iPhones, but now it comes down to the Google Gemini partnership is the first big step. They're bringing in outside talent, which is, I think, unique to what we've seen there. And then this is what I believe is going to build into a subscription service. I mean, that is not being factored into the stock. And I just go back to a year ago, look at Google. New York City cab drivers perish on it. Now today they're doing ticker tape parades for it. You go back to Meta a quarter ago. Now look at it in this quarter. So we're just going to go through this just very sensitive time for tech investors.
Again, the Mark Gurman, Bloomberg News, is reporting today. Maybe some concerns he's calling out about gross margins in the current period due to rising memory prices. Also, some supply chain constraints with the iPhone's 3-nanometer processor. Are all those things kind of suggesting to investors maybe we're going to have great sales, but maybe not the margins we're looking for? Is that an issue?
I think that's been telegraphed, but I do believe you have price increases when it comes to iPhone 18, we'll call it $100, $150. But Paul, I think what ultimately is going to move the stock, when investors are focusing on how do you get to 325, 350, how do you have a stock with a 3 in front of it? It's not going to be sales, margins. It comes down to lay out the AI strategy, show us the playbook. And that's why Cook's going to stay CEO, in my opinion, until that baton's handed, because this is so important, I think, to his legacy.
And what about how it's coping with tariffs? The company said that it created a $1.4 billion headwind. Have we reached the worst?
Yeah, I think worse is probably in the rearview mirror. No, look, that's why I also play nice in the sandbox in D.C. Where Trump has been a huge positive. But it goes back to Cook, 10% politician, 90% CEO. So he's been able to navigate that extremely well. Now investors are, okay, it's good time. Show the growth catalyst. It was a huge step in the right direction last night. But as you see, investors, and this is going to be a narrative in this tech earnings season. Any blemish, anything investors don't like, they're going to take these stocks down. And we saw that with Microsoft and others.
Talks about China here, because that's been a big an overhang for this company for the last couple of years, if not more. What do you think the status is right there about China and Apple?
Well, I think it's a lot more positive. I mean, go back, they were kind of in the middle of a sort of old Western fight between U.S. and China. Now, as those tensions have come down, that's been a huge positive for Apple. That's why Apple and Tesla are the two tech companies that are always caught in there.
Yeah.
I think you've seen those tailwinds. Look, it's so important. 20% iPhone sales. You need that to be a market that's showing growth. And that's why you're seeing it. They're delivering everything you want to see, but the one thing that's missing is the AI strategy. And that, ultimately, that's really the hearts and lungs of what's going to be.
Why haven't they articulated a strategy? And maybe that strategy is we're just going to wait and we're going to partner with whoever we need to partner with, and that is our strategy. Have they said that, or is that not enough?
Look, it's essentially the last few WWDCs, it's been a Back to the Future Michael J. Fox moment, right? The point is, like, they've really been on a treadmill at 2.5 speed. I think part of it was like they were hoping it was going to be internally developed. That wasn't going to happen. They've probably been, I think, slow, and culturally, it's actually hurt them. That's why you start to see changes. And ultimately, they needed Google to win the DOJ suit for this to happen. If Google doesn't win the DOJ suit, this partnership can't happen. Should they have bought Perplexity? Should they have done others? Of course. But that's why this is go time for Apple. And that's what the stocks reflect. The investors are like, give me something.
And do you think that they have a chance in overtaking their peers?
Look, I think when you have the biggest install base in the world and you have a Hall of Fame Mount Rushmore CEO like Cook, you could be late to the game. But 2026, they can't fumble the football. This has to sort of be their moment. I think it's off to a strong start, but as we're seeing in tech, this is going to be much more highly scrutinized. You're not going to be given the sort of maybe latitude, just given this market.
30 seconds left before we let you go. Can you give us your call on Tesla right here?
I mean, I think it's going to be a historical year for Tesla. It's the autonomous and robotics era that's now taking place. Plus, think about SpaceX and XAI, what that's doing to the Musk ecosystem. Musk is wartime CEO, and it comes down, that's why 600 base case, 800 bull case. And this now starts the AI revolution at Tesla.
SpaceX, that IPO happens, that's going to lift just the whole feeling about Elon in general, I would think.
Look, it goes back to like he's playing like chess, others playing checkers when it comes to what he's navigating here. And that's what haters will hate. But when SpaceX comes out, I mean, you're talking about what basically makes him almost $1 trillion.
Biggest listing ever.
I mean, $1.5 trillion valuation. That would be just extraordinary to see. Dan, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it, especially braving the cold out there. You get extra points there. Dan Ives, Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities. Give us the latest on tech. Big week here in technology. The numbers continue to astound, both in terms of the revenue and sales growth, but also the capital spending as well. Let's stay on top of that. A little bit of red on the screen here. S&P down 10 points. The Dow off 165. That's about a third of 1%.
All right, I'm going to play a video by the Navy Secretary, John Fallon, talking about Iran tensions. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol will help soak up free radicals, help the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more energy. Resveratrol will help with youthful gene expression and get rid of cells that are in senescence. Resveratrol also helps the basal layer of your skin. That's why you look younger when you take resveratrol. Resveratrol is really important to take every day to slow down the aging process. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This stacks really well with C60, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into the Navy Secretary.
So warship in the Middle East as tensions rise with Iran. Join us now in an exclusive interview, Secretary of the Navy, John Fallon. Mr. Secretary, it is good to see you.
It's good to see you, Jim. Becky, thank you for having me back.
We definitely want to talk about Iran, and I don't know how much information you can necessarily give us. I just don't think that the president at this point, even though the hangings were stopped, I still don't think he's finished there. I don't know what finally happens. Assets are moving in that direction. I don't know what his options are. We're all just in wait and see mode at this point.
Yeah, look, I think the president's been pretty clear, and I think the president has told Iran that no nuclear, and if they don't really follow that, then I think he's shown you before that he will follow out on his, wishes. And at the end of the day, we have the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group there with 6 destroyers and 3 littoral combat ships. It is the most versatile asset in the United States Navy is a Carrier Strike Group, all weather, cruise missiles, electronic warfare, air capability. So I would suggest Iran settle this soon.
And I don't know what that entails in terms.
Why did it stop? Come on. All right, wait a minute. Something's wrong.
I would suggest Iran settle this soon. And I don't know what that entails in terms of, violently putting down protests, because we know that's still happening, and it's probably worse than what we know.
So I don't know whether agreeing to some concessions for nuclear development is going to satisfy the president in terms of averting additional.
Whoa, what's that? I just built a budgeting app in Base 44. You just built an app.
Impossible. You're not kidding. Interesting. Can you generate reports?
Averting additional military action.
Yeah, look, those are policy issues, and that's really something that the Secretary of State and the President deal with. I just, when the President says, I need assets, that's my job, is to get it to them.
And you're here meeting with investors, and I was thinking about the Navy itself and thinking about what a Navy means to a country. And I know that that's a priority of yours to get back to maybe what some of people would say we've lost some of our preeminence. And I think World War II, what's the first thing that you would attack a country if you wanted to get a leg up? You'd attack, and that's exactly what Japan did at Pearl Harbor. And I think about how inextricably the development of new technology for the Navy, how that plays into our economy, the maritime economy, how quickly we're able to deliver on these unbelievably huge projects that it takes, expensive projects that it takes, but we cannot avoid it any longer.
Yeah. But look, this is really the President's vision, which is to reinvigorate the maritime industrial base. The fact is, to be a superpower, you have to be a sea power. You look at it through history.
There's just no way around it.
No way around. And we are the dominant Navy, and I think what we're doing is we're having our adversaries.
China's not dominant now?
I don't think they're more dominant than us, no. But I think they are catching us at an accelerating rate.
That's a lack of trying.
And so I think the President's identified that. We've let our maritime industrial base atrophy. We can't build things as fast anymore or as good. And so part of the Golden Fleet is really 3 things. It's 1, getting ships into our Navy faster and in a more cost-effective manner. 2 is to restore the maritime industrial base, create jobs. And 3 is to change how the Navy does business. We're now open for business, and that's why I was here meeting with investors.
Mr. Secretary, let me just ask, because the Trump administration has looked at a lot of private industry and said, hey, we need to shore up things because of our national defense interests. It happened with rare earth metals earlier this year. All of those rare earths are things that we want to make sure that companies are doing here in the United States. We've lost that for 25 years at this point. But yesterday, all of those stocks that are tied to that collapsed when it looked like the Trump administration was not going to promise a base price for any of these things. It's really complicated because we believe in capitalism. We want that to happen, but capitalism and the way the Chinese have dumped so much money into their industries are why our industries collapsed in some of these areas. How do we compete with a nation state on doing some of these things, but still stick to our capitalist roots? And then if you are going to make sure you are guaranteeing some of these things, how do you keep a long-term promise for that so that companies will actually pour their own money into doing these things without feeling like they're going to lose their shirts on the deal?
Yeah, look, I think it's a very big challenge, right? Because China subsidizes a number of industries, including shipbuilding, et cetera. I think at the end of the day, American ingenuity and capitalism, I think that system is much better than a controlled system. But I think we have to create the appropriate demand signals to entice investors to come in and allow them to earn an appropriate return.
And what are those signals? How do you do it?
So for shipbuilding, for example, right, we are going to invest a significant amount of money in shipyards. And that includes wages, modernization, multi-year contracts for building.
I think that's probably the key, multi-year contracts.
Yes.
To say that the business will be here. If you build it, the business will be here. Can that survive a change in an administration? Because these are deals that you probably need more than 3 years to make sure you're going to make the return on your investment.
Yeah, look, I think the good thing is for the Navy is there's real bipartisan support behind the Navy. And I think people understand we need to do it. I personally think, I've said this many times, we spent the last 10 years teaching people to code. We're going to spend the next 10 teaching them how to use their hands. If you look at the economic model of going to college today and what you get getting a job, it doesn't make sense. Going to a vocational school or technical school, which is something else we're looking at doing, which the president's very supportive of, that you can get a real job and make real money.
And by the way, that's AI safe.
Yes.
You don't have a bot that's going to come in
Correct.
and perform better than you are.
That is correct.
You know, the president was displeased with certain defense contractors all the way to the point of saying, no, cut down on the buybacks and the dividends, because you're so important to national security that you need to be treated differently than a normal private sector company. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, and you say investors need to step up. That would make maybe some investors, which are financing the defense contractors, obviously they're shareholders as well. They're entitled to, if they deserve a dividend, they should get a dividend. If the corporate manager thinks buybacks are the way to go, that's what they should do. Have they dropped the ball on building out our infrastructure to supply these weapons? Should they be incurring some of the president's displeasure?
Yeah, I think they should be.
They should be.
Yes, and I think Secretary Hegseth, with the executive order, is really trying to bring them more in line. The fact is, they've invested very, very little capital into their infrastructure, and we've allowed the defense industry to get way too small.
In your old life, you would not have liked hearing this as an investor, right? If you had all your clients in defense stocks, and then they were going to be subject to more supervision or regulation.
So I think there's two ways to look at it, Joe, right? The president also announced, a very, very large budget increase. So what he's basically saying is, get your act together, otherwise we're not going to allocate those deals to you. So the fact is, the defense stocks are
almost a carrot and stick thing.
That's correct, and I think that's
a little bit of both.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think these guys have to.
It's another one of the common sense things that's what the president would. I think he told me that in the interview recently. That I am a conservative. Yeah, I do want this. I am capitalist. I am private sector. But there's times where I don't know. You're in a different situation, and he would call common sense.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these are national security assets, and they have got to build them.
It's like utilities.
They are, and we're behind on every major program. We're behind. They're way over budget, and it's crazy. And I think he's tired of the performance. And we've rewarded bad behavior, and that's kind of what he's saying. I'm not going to reward bad behavior anymore.
I wanted the word cuppa as in cup of tea. I thought it would be great to mix with. When I saw the domain was available, I was like, I'm taking it, I'm trademarking it, I'm going with it.
Let's see what else is going on here. The big event is Kevin Warsh being nominated. But another big thing that happened was Don Lemon was arrested because of the church incident. So let's just listen into The Hill.
former CNN host Don Lemon after he entered a church to cover an anti-ICE protest on January 18th.
Now, Lemon's attorney, Abby Lowell, released a statement on Instagram, writing in part, quote, instead of investigating the federal agents who killed 2 peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest, and that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. This unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempt to distract attention from many of the crises facing this administration will not stand. Don will fight these charges vigorously and thoroughly in court.
The Trump administration had initially sought to charge Lemon and 7 others, but a magistrate judge only approved 3 of those and rejected evidence against Lemon. It is not clear what charges Lemon currently faces. Last week, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the various arrests and wrote on X, "Listen loud and clear. We do not tolerate attacks on places of worship." So initially, after that magistrate judge rejected the attempt to bring emergency charges against Don Lemon, they appealed to a higher court, a federal court of appeals, which I think also did not allow them to have an emergency issuance of charges or issuance of a warrant. But they did find the evidence against Don Lemon for violating the FACE Act credible. So I suspect the DOJ, the reason it took longer to arrest him was because they weren't able to get that emergency order, but that didn't mean necessarily that there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. So now he's been arrested. I think it's the right move. We obviously talked about this issue back when it happened. It's pretty clear in the FACE Act that you cannot impede others' right to worship. He was embedded with and organizing with this group. He was not just following them around with a camera. In some videos, he can be heard chanting along with the protesters. He deliberately interrupted the pastor to interview him while his interview was basically him just defending the protesters interrupting this church service. And so to me, he was an active participant, and that went beyond journalism, and he became a protester and obstructed those parishioners' right to be there worshiping God.
I mean, I completely disagree. I think this is an obstruction of the First Amendment. Don Lemon was actually there documenting the experience. As you see, Don Lemon as an independent journalist in recent months since he left CNN, he's been out and putting himself in the center of whatever is happening, the most pressing news of the day. And so he was following an organization that he understood where they were gathering and followed them all the way to the church through what he says in his account. I guess we'll see how this plays out in court, but he says he was following and documenting. And as people that understand and what journalism is all about, there's somebody who is a leader of a church who's giving a sermon probably about acceptance if it's a Christian church, because that's what the Bible teaches us, to accept people that are different than us. And so the fact that he's also preaching that, but then also running a local ICE chapter, people had questions about what his incentives are. It's a natural question that a journalist would ask. So Don Lemon asking those questions to me is not illegal. Don Lemon following a group of protesters to me is not illegal. And he didn't disrupt the worship by explaining what he's seeing protesters doing. I actually watched the live feed, and he was breaking down, like, if you'll see around me, look at this. I'm explaining like a journalist does. And I think now, especially in today's society where we have tons of citizen journalists, because we allow people to take their cameras and tell us what's going on. We don't only accept what the major media outlets, the mainstream media outlets are telling us. That Don Lemon was there trying to figure out what's happening in Minneapolis. There's a lot of people who are trying to figure out what's happening in Minneapolis. I mean, in 1 month, 2 people were killed. And at the same time, we've gotten multiple incorrect statements from the federal government. We've gotten people that have quit the investigation because they were trying to figure out more and get some more dirt on Renee Good's wife and trying to prosecute her instead of looking at if it was a lawful killing of Renee Good. So this whole thing is being handled sloppily. So you would think more journalists would be there telling us exactly what's happening on the ground. And so I think that them putting Don Lemon in custody is ridiculous, and hopefully he gets out soon, because I think that once it starts happening, it really becomes this vendetta situation where President Trump doesn't like you. We don't live in an authoritarian state. So, you know, President Trump has this track record of he doesn't like you and then he comes after you. And he's proven that. And Don Lemon was even fearful of that because he went online and said, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue this crusade against me. And here we are. I think this is embarrassing for our country.
I mean, he was on camera.
You want to file free? Hit it.
custom-made jewelry with Joseph Sorrentino.
I mean, he was on camera before the group went into the church, before they even got there, and winking to the camera about this operation that they were about to do. So he knew exactly what they were doing. He helped them plan this and do it with them. He was not just following along as a cameraman. He inserted himself as a protester. In my opinion, I don't think this is a personal vendetta at all. I think this is actually trying to protect these people who have a right to worship. I mean, the protesters' First Amendment right does not trump the First Amendment right to religious practice, right? That's the fundamental tension here, and that's why the FACE Act covers places of religious worship, because you have to have both of those rights protected at the same time. My right to scream doesn't trump that person's right to listen to their pastor give a sermon. And I'm curious, on this Bible point you made about how, well, the Bible preaches tolerance and acceptance, so we can't enforce immigration policy. Is that the argument?
No, I think if you're supporting the administration specifically working for ICE, President Trump has said some really damning things about specifically Somali people that makes you look at immigrants like they're lesser than. We call people illegal when humans actually can't be illegal. That's a policy thing.
Illegal alien.
Yeah, but that's a policy. I know, but illegal would be the actual thing they're doing. People aren't illegal. So the thing that is doing illegal should be crossing the border. And so this is the way that we're describing human beings, right? Humanity tells us that we don't treat people like that, especially if you're reading the Bible. And so that would be a natural question, right? That you would say, okay, so how do you justify this and this? It doesn't make sense? Connect the dots. That's a question to ask a pastor and also a leader of ICE. I don't think that that's a bad point to make, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Don Lemon is covering what's happening and asking a question. And as a journalist, you could like his question or not like his question, but he's allowed to ask these questions because people at home were asking these questions. Wait, the pastor is also preaching the word of what? So what is he saying when he's running the ICE locally and knows that 2 people were killed and people feel unsafe and uncomfortable in Minnesota? And there needs to be federal government attention to the fact that the local government is iced out of this, and no pun intended, investigation. And people don't trust that this is going to be a fair and flawless investigation to tell us what the truth is. They're concerned with Don Lemon. I think that that's problematic and a huge indication of where the priorities of this administration are, which are not in the right place.
The Bible also tells people to follow the law.
Exactly. But exactly. Don Lemon is allowed to ask those questions, my point. He's allowed to ask about both of those questions. So how do you justify one over the other?
What I'm getting at is that you're saying that the Bible, this guy's basically a hypocrite, right? That's your argument. He's a hypocrite because he's a Christian and he's a pastor, and the Bible preaches tolerance and acceptance, which the Bible teaches a lot more than just tolerance and acceptance. I think we could agree. Yes, right. Mm-hmm. So
it also teaches follow the law, but it doesn't. Right, it doesn't teach you to treat people inhumanely who don't follow the law.
Who is this pastor treating?
It's about the ICE interactions. 2 people have died, and we're trying to make them. They're killed. They're not like their actions.
Pastor killed them?
No, but are you championing what ICE has done? That's the question at hand. Is he championing what ICE has done in his community? Does he think this is the right way forward? Does he think that they were overly aggressive in killing Renee Good? Does he think these are questions that you can ask? I mean, you support ICE. Justify this. Are you on the side of Kristi Noem, who's going to call him a domestic terrorist? I mean, that's what your leader is telling you. That's the appropriate term. She's running ICE, right? Do you align with that? These are regular journalist questions.
Not while the guy's preaching a sermon.
I'm just telling you, Don Lemon shouldn't go to jail for that. I don't think that is absurd. He was literally documenting and telling us what's going on and asking questions like journalists should. I don't think that he should be behind bars in any way. I think this is frivolous, and hopefully his lawyer gets it thrown out. That's my perspective. President Trump raised some eyebrows with his comments about housing during his cabinet meeting. We'll dive into that next. Stick around.
What it was is Don Lemon wanted to do a stunt so he could get some notoriety on his podcast. That's what he did. So, it's all about views. It's all about views.
Dolly sitting in for Scarlett Thue. I'm Paul Sweeney live here on Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. Hour number 2 coming up. We're going to check in with Terry Haynes, founder at Pangea Policy, get his thoughts on what we're seeing down in Washington, D.C. with this new Fed chair nominee. We're also going to speak with Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research on this Fed nominee pick. Remember, Danielle used to work at the Dallas Fed for many years, so she is wired into all things in the Fed. It's Friday, which means we talk municipal bonds. John Tucker's all fired up about that. Big New Jersey municipal bond holder. Vincent Piazza is going to join us here, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Equity Research Analyst. Talk to us about some of the earnings we saw from some of the big oil companies, Chevron, Exxon, Mobil. How are they dealing with gas prices and oil prices at these levels. So we got a lot coming up in this hour. Let's kick it all off with John Tucker at Bloomberg Business Watch.
All right, Paul, thanks. And let's start off with the major averages. They are lower right now. Investors seem to be reacting in part to the nomination of the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. The thinking is he's not going to support really deep rate cuts. Best performing stock of the S&P 500, Decker's Outdoor, up close to 16%. Analysts credit robust Hoka gains. Those are sneakers, folks. And the UGG brand, which seems to be kind of steady. Not far behind SanDisk, that is up close to 14%. They had strong revenue and earnings outlook. Remember this, after their debut, up 1,700% since the debut last year. Meantime, John Stolfus, chief investment strategist at Oppenheimer, says the bull case for stocks that does remain intact.
It's steady forward. It's a rock steady moment when we think about the bull market and what's supporting it.
The S&P 500 down right now 24 points, 69.44. The Dow 279 points lower. The Nasdaq 100 right now 156 points lower. Let me give some love to Treasury's 30-year yield. That is up close to 3 basis points, 487 right now. The 2-year actually down 2 basis points. That is at 353. Who wants to go shopping this weekend? Sure. Okay. Saks off fifth, the discount retailer, does start to close nearly 3 dozen stores all over the place. These are clearance sales, and they're going to try to clear out all the inventory as much as possible, likely attracting shoppers from across the country who want to pick up bargains on some of these luxury items.
Alex Steele, too.
I was saying you can drive Paul and me, and we can all go together.
Okay. Saks filed for bankruptcy, of course, the parent earlier this month. But anyway, we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Isabel, Paul.
All right, JT, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel is sitting in for Scarlett Fu. I'm Paul streaming live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. We can do that with Bloomberg's television markets correspondent, Norma Linden. Nor, what are you looking at?
Well, Paul, a lot to keep an eye on today, but I've got my eyes on shares of Apple. That's ticker AAPL. We're seeing shares sliding by about 1.1%. So we did see that the company delivered record quarterly sales and a better than anticipated forecast in terms of the current period. But what's really been weighing on the company and what the analysts and investors are thinking about as they're digesting this report is the fact that the company is warning that rising component costs are threatening to squeeze margins. So you're really seeing Wall Street really trying to work out what this means for the stock long term. So we are seeing a bit of a slide, but of course pairing from its earlier decline of as much as 2.4% lower.
What about Tesla? What's going on there?
Yeah, Tesla, this one's also been in focus. This one in the green, though. We're seeing shares up by about 4.8%. This is after Elon Musk said that SpaceX is considering a merger with Tesla or XAI. So this has really been buoying the stock higher, especially as we're thinking about what this could mean for the company in the long term. I mean, when we see the stock, though, on a year-to-date basis so far in January, down about 3%, but getting a nice boost today, Isabel.
One more. What do you got? Amex. Let's try that.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the finance names. I've got my eyes on American Express. That's ticker AXP. We're seeing shares that are down by more than 3%. Earlier hitting their lowest level since November. This is after the company's Platinum Card refresh boosted expenses more than anticipated. We also did see profit that fell short of analyst expectations. So you are seeing Wall Street really selling off shares of this stock. But Amex rather did say that it will boost its dividend 16%.
I'm going to go to General Keane talking about Iran, where we're increasing our probability of hitting it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. This will slow down the aging process, help with your brain function, help with your immune system, your endocrine system, and your cardiovascular system. It's really important. By detoxifying your body, bringing down inflammation, and soaking up free radicals regularly, your body will perform better and you'll slow down the aging process. So go to my store, get the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. The gladiator barley has the same benefits as the heirloom barley, but one extra one, and that is it'll help to build muscle. Also, go to my store and get the collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, your hair, your nails, your musculature, your bone density, and even your joints. You can take this with collagen, which I'll talk about later. But this is a great supplement to help with your skin, your joint health, your musculature, and your bone density. So please go to my store. This is a month's supply and get the collagen. It's very high quality. The typical amino acid profile is shown on the screen here. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
The rumors were true. The deck is.
Need commercials on YouTube.
Have you had any conversations with Iran in the last few days, and are you planning on any?
I have had, and I am planning on it. We have a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now, and it would be great if we didn't have to use them.
Can you say what the message was that you shared with Iranians?
Well, I told them 2 things. Number 1, no nuclear, and number 2, stop killing protesters. But they're going to have to do something.
Mr. President, you a nightmare ride to the White House.
Nobody's seen that.
President Trump sharing his message to Iran as a new report reveals Saudi Arabia and Israeli officials will be meeting with the Trump administration to talk possible U.S. strikes on Iran. Here to discuss, retired 4-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, good morning. Thank you for being here. Obviously, we are seeing the president's message there. Where do you see things standing?
Well, certainly people are talking about negotiations, but I don't think it's realistic given the Iranians. I mean, the Ayatollah himself is so diabolical, so committed, to the ideals that he's trying to establish. And he wants to dominate and control the Middle East and export his radical form of fundamentalist Islamic terrorism to the world. I mean, they haven't changed one bit. They still want to pursue a nuclear weapon. They still want to support the proxies that are in the region to destabilize the region and take down Israel. And they have a ballistic missile program that is growing every single day. Obviously, that threatens Israel and potentially our bases in the region. That's where they are. He has emissaries that talk nice to our people. But that's where the leadership really is. And they've been like this for 45 plus years. I mean, I got to give them this. They have been consistent throughout that time frame. Objectives are dominate and control the region, drive the United States military out of the region. That's why they've been killing us by the hundreds, actually over a couple thousand plus since 1982 to the present. This is Americans now. And certainly destroy the state of Israel. And you've seen their attempts at doing that. They have not changed one iota. And if they say, oh, we're going to make a deal over nuclear, we all know what that means. Lie and cheat. Lie and cheat, because that's what they have done. And that's why the military option is on the table. And I also think it's the most likely that we're going to execute.
And we just had up on the screen a map of the force posture we have there. A lot of capabilities there. We know that obviously aircraft and other assets, including 30 to 40,000 troops in the region, should there be some sort of desperate act. And you talk about the emissaries talking nice, but we did have yesterday a high-ranking advisor to Ayatollah Khamenei saying this: a limited strike is an illusion. Any military action by the U.S. from any origin and at any level will be considered an act of war, and the response will be immediate, all-out, and unprecedented, targeting the heart of Tel Aviv and those supporting the aggressor. That's a bit telling, General, because I think it suggests that if we do indeed take action, that they will then seek in some part of a desperation measure try and destabilize the region.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that kind of rhetoric, it shouldn't surprise us. I mean, but when you look at the hard, cold facts here, Iran has never been weaker than they are right now in their entire history since this regime took power in 1980, politically, economically, and militarily. And we have an opportunity here to really set some conditions for the eventual regime collapse. And that's why the military option is on the table, and that's why it's being considered certainly by the United States and Israel, and so hopefully supported by allies in the region as well, despite all the public rhetoric to the contrary, that this option really does make some sense. You know, you're taking action against the leaders there, taking action against the forces that are repressing the people and hold them accountable for the thousands that they've killed. I mean, Griff, listen, they have never killed as many of their own citizens in their history as they have done right now. And in their history, they have never locked up summarily in a matter of a week or two as many citizens as they have, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40,000. And when the spotlight is off, they will begin executing them by the hundreds and into the thousands. Why do we know that? Because that's what they have done in the past. So the opportunity is here. Certainly, there's always unknowns about military operations. There's always risk associated with military operations. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the cost-benefit analysis, the opportunity to put the regime on a path to collapse, an opportunity we haven't had like this in all of these years. So despite their rhetoric, do they have capability to retaliate? Yes, they do. They do have missiles. Likely, this is one of the reasons why they're moving all of these additional resources in, not just to conduct a effective offensive campaign against them, certainly in terms of leaders and other targets that we can take down, but also we know they're going to retaliate. We want to have air defenses there to protect ourselves in the region, bases, and also to help protect the Israelis. They have their own, but we complimented them before during the 12-day war. And also this, a very important target, is the one military capability that they have that we pay attention to. We took away their nuclear capability, obviously, is their ballistic missiles. The Israelis did not destroy all of their launch systems and not all of their missiles when the war ended after 12 days. And they've been recovering that. So likely one of the reasons why the additional resources have been brought in is not just for better defense, but also offensively to take down those missiles quite significantly and take away that capability that they're holding there as leverage. So yeah, this is the path I think we're on, and certainly these options are going to be executed, I think, sooner rather than later, given now that our resources are in the region, they're being positioned. Being in the region is one thing, being in position to conduct a military operation with the exact positioning of each ship, the submarines, etc., that's quite another. And I'm assuming that is what has taken place.
And at a time when, as you point out so rightfully, General, that the regime has never been weaker, the fall of a regime that has reigned terror since 1979, that would be so historic. General Jack Keane, thank you for taking time. Great insight. Have a great weekend.
Okay, so
you too, Griff.
Natural gas futures are trading at 4.28. It peaked at 4.309, and oil is trading above $66 a barrel. I suspect that this will continue to creep up until we hit Iran. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. This will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, help with your immune system and your endocrine system. Ashwagandha root helps to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels. Turmeric brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. When you stack this together, it's a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, help with your cardiovascular system, and by bringing down inflammation at the brain level, you will improve the health of your neurons. So please go to my store, take this stack every day to slow down the aging process. All right, let's listen into CNBC.
Continues to be, in the news, it continues to be in the headlines. But when you think about the uncertainty about the global trading system, I think we're at a very different place than we were last spring and summer.
Do you think tariffs are showing up in the economy anywhere?
So I have no doubt that there are relative price changes happening from tariffs. I still don't think that tariffs are a very significant driver of overall inflation. I gave a speech on inflation in December at Columbia that I encourage anybody interested in the subject to look up. The reason why I don't think tariffs are a big driver of inflation is because I don't see it when I make the types of comparisons where I would expect to see it. If I compare imported core goods in the United States to overall core goods, I would think imported core goods would be seeing much higher inflation. Not the case. If I compare core goods prices in the United States to core goods prices in the rest of the world and peer countries, I would expect core goods price in the US to stick out visibly from the pack. Not the case. There's no way when I run either of these two experiments that the inflation that should be showing up from tariffs is there. So I don't think tariffs are a meaningful driver of inflation.
Just getting word that Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer says Republicans must not move Warsh nomination forward if DOJ actions against Powell are not dropped. Less surprising to hear it, for instance, than from Republicans, which Senator Tillis has also said. Do you think that they will drop the investigation? Do you have a view on this?
Oh, look, I deal with monetary policy. If you want to talk about that, I'd encourage you to have someone in from the Justice Department.
A lot of people think that it's a threat to monetary policy, having a criminal investigation into Fed Chair Powell.
Look, I have my views on monetary policy. They're based on inflation. They're based on the labor market, like we've been talking about. And I think everybody else does too. I think the institutions in this country are strong. They're not affected by things like this. The Federal Reserve is a group of people that are each doing what they think is appropriate in monetary policy, and that's going to continue to be the case.
Finally, one big discussion coming out of Davos was about maybe the Europeans or whoever buying incrementally less U.S. treasuries, whether or not treasuries have lost their risk-free reputation. Does the long end concern you at this point as we continue to kind of hover just below 5 on the 30?
No, I think we're in ranges we've been in for a long period of time. The long end of the yield curve isn't something that concerns me at all right now.
What about gold? What's with gold going up?
Well, look, gold is a small market, right? Like people say that if you took all the gold in the world, it would fill one Olympic-sized swimming pool type of thing, right? If you have a small market, it doesn't take a lot of money to move the price a lot. And so I don't know what the size of the flows in a market like gold, what the size of those flows are. However, I suspect that the size of the volumes are less spectacular than the price change. It's not something that I think is sort of really informative.
Yeah, well, Powell also kind of brushed it off in the news conference this week. So finally, Governor Martin, what is up for you next? Are you going to go back to the White House to resume the role of CEA chair?
I have no idea. Well, one thing is sure, and that is that I'll remain in my current seat until my successor is confirmed. And, presumably at the moment, that's Chairman Designate Warsh, but, we'll see. And then once that happens, I'm anxiously waiting to find out myself. So, you've got your sources. Please call them and ask them and tell me when you know.
Will do, and please keep us posted as well. In the meantime, it's great having you here to talk through policy.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Stephen Myron, Fed Governor.
Near session lows here down 440. Let's get a news update with Mackenzie Sagalos. Hey, Mackenzie.
Hey, Charles. Luigi Mangione will not face the death penalty if convicted. That was a ruling from a federal judge this morning. Mangione is charged with killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in December 2024 on a New York City street. The judge also ruled that evidence recovered from Mangione's backpack at the time of his arrest will be admitted at trial. Mangione's lawyer had argued the search was illegal because police had yet to obtain a warrant. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just announced that the Justice Department is releasing some 3 million pages of records from the Epstein files. The DOJ was mandated by law to release all the files by last month, but has continually missed deadlines, blaming delays on the vast number of records and privacy concerns over victim information. And NASA just delayed the upcoming Artemis 2 crew trip around the moon because of near freezing temperatures at the launch site in Florida. The first trip around the moon since the Apollo missions is now targeted for no earlier than February 8th, 2 days later than planned. Back to you guys.
Okay, thank you, Mackenzie. When we come back, Deutsche Bank's first reaction to the president's pick of Kevin Warsh for Fed chair, whether the decision impacts the outlook for rate cuts or the firm's 8,000 year-end price target for the S&P 500. We're just at 7,000 now.
World's largest AI companies began the race to go public. We'll get a look at the potential timelines and why it might matter who makes their debut first.
All right. I want to play this, the challenge of meaningful reform in Iran by France 24.
A Hellier, Senior Fellow in Geopolitics, International Security and Middle East Studies at the Royal United Services Institute for Defense and Security Studies in London. Dr. Hellier, thank you so much for joining us today on the program. Now, we've seen this massive buildup of military might by the U.S., sort of similar to what Washington did with Venezuela. We were just talking to our correspondent in Iran. He was talking about some negotiations. What are Iran's options at this point?
First, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on the program. Iran has very limited options. The fact of the matter is that what the Americans are requesting from Tehran to accede to such a deal would be incredibly threatening to the Iranian regime, because it would signal pretty much surrender to its most potent base within the country. So I think it's very difficult for the Iranians to move forward in terms of these negotiations unless the Americans actually change the terms that they've made pretty clear time and again. So I don't expect much to come out of these negotiations at all, really. I think that it's quite likely that we will see a strike at some point. The question will be what sort of an attack this will mean, and then what the consequences are for the region.
Now, Dr. Hellier, traditionally the Arab countries and Iran have been rivals, but it appears this time they're not really welcoming the possibility of military action by the U.S. Why is that?
So first, I wouldn't really term it as rivals in the sense that when it comes to most of the Arab Gulf, and not the Arab countries in general, remember there are 22 members of the Arab League, we're really talking about countries in the Gulf. Countries in the Gulf have been very critical of Iranian interference across the region, and quite understandably so. Having said that, it's not simply this time that they've been very clear in their opposition to any type of external military strike on Iran. They were clear about that last year. They were clear about that earlier this month, including incidentally countries that have been very publicly and very vocally opposed to Iranian intervention in places like Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, of varying degrees, I might add. But I think that this is very clear to the extent that even the UAE, which has been very clear in its opposition to Iranian engagement across the region in a nefarious fashion, have been very public about their opposing any type of military strike, and making it clear to the Iranians that if one were to take place, it would not involve the UAE and it would not involve the usage of any UAE bases or anything like that.
As you mentioned, the U.S. does have bases with some of these Gulf countries, and they've said that they don't want them to be used for a strike or to have U.S. Jets flying over. So is that now then limiting the options that the U.S. has? Trump's talking tough about a military attack, but if his regional allies aren't in support, does that impact the decision-making here?
I think when it comes to the Trump administration, if Donald Trump decides that he wants to strike Iran, then he's going to strike Iran. He may not get the full cooperation of his allies in the region to do so, but I don't think that's going to stop him. We've seen the U.S. president make it very clear that when he wants to engage, even in actions that might be deemed reckless, he goes ahead and he does it. He's done this with regards to Venezuela. He's done this with regards to Iran last year. I suspect that and we're only talking about the first year of his presidency. I suspect there will be other episodes like this going forward. But it does mean that he will be very clearly, if he does go forward with the strike, he'll be going very clearly against what's pretty much a consensus in the region. The only state in the region that would support such a strike would be the state of Israel. And Israel has already, I won't say lost, I think it's completely completely absent of credibility in the region when it comes to regional stability because of its genocidal war on Gaza, the invasion occupation of territories in Syria and in Lebanon, and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up Israel. I just wanted to follow up on that, ask you, Israel sees Iran as an existential threat, but if the regime is toppled, if that's one of the things that comes out of possible military action, could that pave the way for something worse to spring up in its place? And is that what is a major concern here?
I think that is a major concern.
Pluto TV has a universe of free content. What? Pluto TV is always free. Free. People just need free stuff. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
I think that is a major concern because I think if you do see a toppling of the regime in Iran, there isn't an easy answer as to having some sort of smooth transition thereafter. The regime itself is probably the weakest position that it's ever been in, at least in the last few decades. At the same time, it still has a critical mass of support. I say critical mass, I don't say majority. I don't think the majority of Iranians are supportive of this regime. But I don't think that a majority of Iranians are looking to topple it either, simply because they're concerned about what might happen next. And in any intervening period between the ending of one regime and the building of a new political dispensation, there can be a lot of chaos. And I think that that's really where the largest mass of Iranians actually are, in that space where they're not supportive of the regime, but they're worried about the chaos that might unfold in the event of a toppling. So I think that that's also where the region's leaders are as well, that they're concerned that, okay, we don't like the Iranian regime. We think that it's damaging across the region, but we would prefer to try to contain it. We would prefer to try to minimize its impacts or effects because we're worried what would happen in the event of a toppling. The uncertainty principle, I think, here really motivates a lot of calculations.
And Dr. Hellier, one final question. I want to circle back to those negotiations because we know that Iran has sent envoys to Turkey. Egypt, too, has spoken with the Steve Witkoff, the U.S. Middle Eastern envoy there. So with all of this that's happening, the hard thing, I think, is nobody really knows what Donald Trump is thinking. So that makes it hard to have successful negotiations. Do you think that's a fair assessment? I mean, if they don't know what the end game is, how do you negotiate with that?
I mean, that's a fair point. But honestly, I think that the main issue here is that the Iranian regime is really stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to these negotiations in any event. The demands that are being made by Washington, D.C. are quite maximalist. The irony is that, the resistance of the regime in Iran to actually fulfilling these demands, especially around enrichment, they're not really going anywhere. I mean, they haven't really done much in the way of enrichment because they can't. They simply don't have that capacity right now. But I think that it's much more, how should I say, consequentialist than that, in the sense that if the Iranians were to fold, then it would really send a message to that ideological base within the country. And I think that that's what would probably concern the ruling elite in Iran at present. They need to hold on. And it may well be that there will be strikes and they will look as though they can't provide security to the population, which is, breaking a part of the quote-unquote social contract that they have. But I think that they would prefer that outcome as opposed to appearing as though they were willing to buckle with the United States. So really, they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the idea of reforming the system in Iran, I think, is really difficult. I'm not sure that there's a way to do that unless you basically admit that the revolution is over, and they're not willing to do that.
Dr. Hellier, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. That's Dr. H.A. Hellier from the Royal United Services Institute for Defense and Security Studies in London.
Switch to TurboTax. File free in the app by 228. All 100% free. Now this is taxes.
Autumn is in the air.
What do you think Fed Chairman Jay Powell will do when he steps down from his leadership position? Do you think he'll stay on the board, or will he just sail off into the sunset?
I think it was very telling to markets, and it was very telling to the current administration that he refused to answer the question at the press conference. And I would encourage Jerome Powell to stay on through January of 2028. Philosophically, at least, we know that the two are aligned. The two do not like, or at least I should say, Jerome Powell, back when he was first appointed to the Fed, came very close to dissenting against QE3. So I would hope that the two would be able to work together, and that Jay Powell would stick around until his term ends.
And if Warsh really is committed to the rates, very quickly,
He should step down.
How does the chair really have in persuading other governors? Because it's not just his one vote, as everyone has repeatedly said.
That is absolutely the case. He could be looking at a number of dissents on day one. However, I think with the messages coming out, with just the clear data that we're seeing, whether it's Conference Board or University of Michigan, or the fact that so many Americans are not filing for unemployment insurance, and yet Google Trends shows you that we've got an almost record level of Americans searching for file unemployment. I think that data will speak for itself, and that many will be on board with lowering rates if we have to wait to do so until June. I certainly hope that is not the case.
Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate getting some of your time. Danielle DiMartino Booth, she's the CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research, and really a go-to voice for us on all things Federal Reserve. She spent a long stretch at the Dallas Fed banks.
Welcome back. AI computing company Sandbox AQ provides business-to-business AI solutions for sectors like finance, healthcare, cybersecurity, and others. The company partnering with OpenFold to launch a new AI model which helps enable pharmaceutical research and development, potentially unblocking a persistent bottleneck in the healthcare industry. Joining me now is the boss, Sandbox AQ CEO, Jack Hittery. Jack, congratulations.
Maria, great to see you. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see you. Talk to us about this new model, what it means for the medical field.
Well, the big theme now emerging in the AI field is going beyond AI for the digital world. Large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, incredible tools.
All they're doing is automating protein folding and docking to a particular molecule. HadDock is free. AlphaFold's free. A researcher can use those free tools and not even have to pay for this. This is ridiculous.
In use, but we now need to move on to beyond large language models to large quantitative models like AQ Affinity that we just launched this week. What is AQ Affinity? It allows researchers and drug companies and academics to create new drugs for cancer, for Alzheimer's, for diabetes, for other areas in a way they couldn't do before. Traditionally, it would take many, many years to do the work in a laboratory to figure out how a drug, a potential drug...
You don't need this. All you need is AlphaFold and HadDock. And then you have to validate in the real world. See, these people are playing games. They're trying to automate processes that are tools that are already being done already. And what is interesting is that if you create, let's say, random mutations or transpositions within a certain sequence, and then you fold it and then test to see if it can act as an inhibitor or an agonist, an antagonist or an agonist, voila, you got in silico development. Shit, I'll tell you, these people, they're building businesses that there's not going to be that much of a true gain in it. They're just automating the process. And you can automate the process in MATLAB or in Python or in R.
And with the receptor, the target in the body. Now with AQ Affinity that we just launched with this consortium. This consortium includes Bristol Myers Squibb, includes Bayer, includes other major companies. This is a consortium that is putting out the best tools out there to develop drugs faster and better.
How does it do that, Jack?
What it does is it models the real world inside of the computer. And so it has the physics understanding of the real world. And these are models where that we cannot train on words. So if you look at ChatGPT and Gemini, fantastic models, but they train on the words of the internet. To do the real world stuff, we need to train on the actual physics, biology.
So he's taking the interaction of molecules, the pH levels, the salt concentrations, whatever is happening either in the cellular matrix or in the cell, and what those affinities would be, what those conformation shapes would change, what sort of drug may fit into a certain area. This has been going on for a long time. This is taking bits and pieces of other systems and putting it all together and making the workflow easier.
Chemistry of our bodies. And that's what this does.
Well, this is really like, one of those things where you can understand how it's saving
been
lives.
around for years.
And AI is truly transformational. I mean, it's transforming all aspects of the global economy. We know that. But when you take a look at specifically in healthcare and medicine, you understand the magnitude of this. I mean, the U.S. is pushing to be #1 over China. I spoke with NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang about it at the World Economic Forum last week. Watch what he said.
So we need to win the AI race at every single layer. We want to win the energy layer. We want to win the chip layer, the infrastructure layer, the AI model layer, and also the application layer. President Trump wants us to go win the marketplace, compete around the world, bring home jobs, create revenue for the United States, and continue to lead the technology around the world.
Jack, what do you think about that, about this race with China? I mean, it was an AI race, but it's also become a power race. I mean, Beijing is pushing to ban American and also Israeli cybersecurity technology from being used in any Chinese companies. Do you believe that? What's your take on counteracting China?
Well, first of all, Jensen's absolutely correct. NVIDIA is one of our investors and one of our partners. And what Jensen talks about is AI for the physical world. That's what we're all talking about. And emerging from Davos, we have AI for the real world. And that's the kind of AI that we need to also beat China on. China right now has DeepSeek, has Alibaba, Quen, has other models coming out that are in the large language model area. But now is our opportunity as the United States to really beat them where it counts, which is AI for the real world. And that's what Jensen talks about. On the cybersecurity issue, this is a critical function. One of the things emerging from Davos also is the theme of making sure we're ready for the quantum attacks. And China has a major program led by Pan Jianwei and others that are building the quantum computers that will attack it. In Davos, the founder of Ethereum talked about Q Day is coming. And that means that Bitcoin, that Ethereum, that other cryptocurrencies are at risk. And it's time that we bolster them by moving them over to post-quantum cryptography. Wow. This administration has been very supportive, and I hope will be even more supportive in the coming months, because now is the critical moment to defend ourselves against the upcoming Chinese attack using quantum computers that will attack the financial system, the telco system, government files, as well as Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
It's incredible. So we'll really keep a focus on quantum. What do you think Elon Musk means when he says, AI is going to mean you're not going to have to work, robots are going to do everything? Can you explain what vision he's talking about?
Well, I'm very supportive of the vision of humanoid robots. I think we're going to see them much sooner than people realize. This is not a Jetsons feature. This is coming now in the next 4 or 5 years. And when you look at Tesla, for example, people keep thinking Tesla is a car company. Tesla is not a car company. Tesla is a robotics and automation company. In fact, they just announced this week that they're discontinuing 2 of their lines of models, and they're going to favor focus on on their robotics division. And so my prediction is that Tesla will probably double in stock price over the next 3-4 years. And the reason is automation and robotics. When you look at humanoid robots, you look at them in warehouses and distribution, such as Amazon, Walmart, and others. You're going to see them adopting these kinds of robots. You're going to see hospitals adopt them. We talked about medical care. Hospitals right here in New York City have tens of thousands of workers, and we can use humanoid robots. But these are jobs that you can't really keep humans in. These are not the medical jobs. These are the low-skilled labor. And we need robots to bring in and deliver on these kinds of jobs as well. So I do think that companies like Tesla, like Figure.ai, which is a private company today, and many others such as Electronic and Agility, will be the future in terms of humanoid robots in the workplace.
Unbelievable. So everybody's going to have their own AI assistant?
Well, I definitely think we're going to have a software AI assistant.
That's an additional.
The big announcement with Google and Apple just this week was amazing. But I do think that we're also going to see humanoid robots initially in the workplace and industry, not so much in consumer, but eventually in our homes as well.
Wow. Well, robots are taking over?
Eventually. Not taking over, but they'll be part of our lives that I think will augment our lives.
All right, Jack. Great stuff. We'll be watching. Jack Kittery joining us here. Stay with us.
Thanks.
We'll be right back.
So going forward, it's steady as she goes. It's really about disciplined investing in the business, allowing the Permian and also Guyana to provide that upside. And really, it's about the upstream side of the business because the downstream is in a secular decline, a structural decline with the headwinds. But it's really about the upstream. It's really about the Permian. And you know about the Permian, why? Because you watch Landman. That's right. What we're going to see in 2026, really, not only from the big integrators, but also from the other companies that are going to reporting, is what do you think about natural gas here at these levels, and are they going to turn up the spigot on production, which we really don't view it as such. We think the capital discipline will be maintained. We don't think there'll be a great deal of production growth coming in 2026, and what you're going to get is a return of excess cash.
So both Chevron and Exxon beat earnings expectations this quarter, but Exxon managed to grow profit and Chevron's profit declined despite the beat. What did Exxon do correctly from an operational and strategic standpoint that maybe Chevron didn't?
Yeah, so Exxon has pioneered, and that's Permian. So the Permian and the Guyana has worked out quite well. The upstream is really the driver for Exxon. What's interesting, though, when you think about the free cash flow that both Exxon and Chevron generate, Exxon is somewhere around $5.5 billion, yet they paid out almost $10 billion in distributions via share buybacks and dividends. That can be done because of Exxon's financial flexibility, big cash hoard, so they can support those distributions and their shareholder engagement. Similar for Chevron. The Chevron is a little bit lagging because of, they just acquired Hess, they're integrating Hess. So they're a little bit further behind the process, but also for them, they also have Guyana via Hess, and they also have the Permian as well. So somewhat smaller, a little bit behind where Exxon is, but they're catching up as well.
Chevron's in Venezuela, has been in Venezuela for a long time. They're really the only ones. Everybody else said, the heck with this. What do you think is going to happen going forward with the change in regime change in Venezuela?
Very slow. It'll be a very slow uptick in output. They're roughly around 250,000 barrels per day right now. You could see that doubling in about 2 years, but this is about sourcing in country. We don't see the backdrop for incremental higher investment in country to grow that output. We just see them reallocating within the country to get that output going. And 250,000 barrels over the next, call it 24 months, isn't really that big of a production boost when you think about the global franchise and roughly 4 million barrels a day of output.
It does seem like international opportunities are the way to go, at least for them. But in your view, which company's portfolio and growth investments maybe are better positioned to deliver growth in the longer term for the price of oil?
In my view, and we've said this in a lot of what we've published in the last year or so. Exxon definitely, because of the franchise in the Permian, because of Guyana. Chevron will get there. They're lagging somewhat only because of the delayed arbitration over Hess, but now they have the Guyana piece as well, the participation with Exxon in Guyana. They also have the Permian as well. So both of these enterprises have those key pillars for growth for 2026, even out to 2030. Both have provided very reasonable growth expectations. A lot of those expectations, a lot of that, the theme is really on the upstream side of the business. That's really going to drive the business. For Exxon, the downstream investments in the energy products, that will also be a positive for them. But at this point, Exxon does seem to have the upper hand in terms of the scale in the Permian and also Guyana as well. I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if more is done on the upstream side, because this is a maturing industry, right? And so consolidation is the key. What we have said and what we've published over the last several years is this industry needs to consolidate. We will have fewer but much larger players in the upstream business here in the lower 48.
Nat gas, but just over the last couple of months, we went from $4 down to almost $2.50. Now we're above $4 for nat gas. It's been all over the place. How are investors playing nat gas these days?
So in our 2026 outlook, we focused on nat gas over WTI oil. There are structural advantages that natural gas has. Number one, not only on the LNG side, but also in the build out for the tech data centers. These are structural growth opportunities for natural gas that crude oil does not enjoy. And natural gas remains in the process of consolidation as well, whether it's in Appalachia or in the Haynesville. So once again, you will have fewer operators, but larger operators, stronger operators, molecules in the hands of much larger operators with better balance sheets, able to manage these businesses going forward.
Vince, thanks for joining us. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Always appreciate getting a few minutes of your time on global energy. Vince Piazza, Senior Equity Research Analyst. He does it all for us on the oil and gas side. Again, two big companies reporting some pretty solid numbers. The stocks, performing well. They have an administration that is pro-energy. They've got a new customer, which is all these AI data centers that need energy. So good time to be in that business. Looking at WTI crude oil.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. Collagen helps to remodel your joint. It'll help to use the collagen tube to help with the cartilage. It'll help to use ACAN for the cushioning of the joint. And it will help with reducing pain by blocking EP4 and help to reduce the further deterioration of the joint by blocking MMP3 and MMP13. It will also help to recruit and use glucosamine to remodel the joint and chondroitin to help with the cushioning. It's a very powerful product. If you have joint pain and you're having problems either from a sports injury or because you're just getting older, check out the collagen product. You can stack this with the collagen product too, but you can take it separately. But take the collagen and help to remodel your joints, and it will reduce some of that pain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. All right, let's see here. What's going on? There's a big drop in silver right now, like almost a 20% drop. This is Face the Nation 53 minutes ago.
The deal with the White House on a spending package to avoid a partial government shutdown. It addresses Democrats' concerns over ICE funding, but lawmakers left Capitol Hill without taking a vote last night, each blaming the other side for this delay.
What ICE is doing outside the law is state-sanctioned thuggery, and it must stop.
I'm willing to entertain some reforms, but the cancer that we're dealing with is sanctuary city policy.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin, hey, good morning. What's in this new funding agreement?
Well, this is something we never see up here on Capitol Hill, rarely, really. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, striking a deal with Senate Democrats. And that just goes to show that nobody wants to see a government shutdown, because the lessons learned from last time are very much hovering over all of this. But just to be clear, they have not struck a deal on reforms to immigration enforcement and ICE. They've struck a deal on how to proceed with continuing to fund the government, and then also giving them some more time to work out some of these policies. So what they have agreed to is to pass 5 spending bills to fund most of the government, and then also to fund DHS just for 2 more weeks to buy some time to continue these negotiations over ICE policy. So that's what the Senate is hoping to do today. They were supposed to do it last night, but it got held up. So now they are trying to do it again today. They need all senators to agree just to move forward with this. Once they pass this today, though, it still has to go through the House of Representatives, and they've been on recess, guys. They're not coming back until Monday, most likely. So what we are likely to see is a temporary lapse in government funding. Remember, the money runs out tonight at midnight. So over the weekend, we'll probably see a partial shutdown, and then the House will come back Monday and take this up. What is key here, guys, is the president. He has been the one working with Senate Democrats and urging his own party not to move forward with any government shutdown. And he acknowledged kind of the impact that this had on the economy. But it's also important to note, guys, that half of the government is already funded. So even this weekend, if it lapses, half of the government will at least be open.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns reporting from the Hill for us. Caitlin, thank you.
Please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It'll help with brain function, cardiovascular health, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels, boost up your immune system, and help with your endocrine system, and help with musculature. If you have problems controlling your A1C levels, this is a great way to try to control it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost, take it every day. This is a month's supply. And it's really important to approach a holistic way to slowing down the aging process and getting healthy. Proper diet and exercise. Make sure you do some resistance training and some cardiovascular training, about 65-35 split, heavy on the resistance training. Mindfulness, some spirituality, that will help to go into a parasympathetic mode. Stay away from processed foods. Be mindful of the sugar levels that you're taking in. Proper sleep, proper supplementation. A holistic perspective on this is going to work together synergistically to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg.
To me, if I can, just for a moment, is that we're also moving firmly into a new era of cars that are worth a lot of money. You know, when I was a kid, people were paying the big money for a Bugatti Type 35 or a Bentley blower. Yeah. And as I got into college, I started to see the GTOs go for like huge money, or the 250 California that Cameron drove in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or Ferris rather drove. It was Cameron's dad's car. And now you're seeing. I remember being at Miller Motor Cars and hearing somebody badmouth an Enzo or a 288 GTO as like a footballer's wife's car. Like basically, not classy enough to fetch the big money. And you're moving into an era where those are getting the money. I mean, a GTO, a 250 did sell at the Mecum auction for $38.5 million. Wow. But to David Lee, who's probably been after one for a long time. And you're starting to see like a Porsche 918, which they were going for 3, and I saw one at Mecum go for over 6 with all the juice, like 6.5. So you're starting to see these newer cars also get all the money, and obviously it's not people like me, it's billionaires that are chasing these cars.
Yeah, and it's not just demographics.
I was going to ask who are buying these, and have you seen a shift in demographics?
So the on-ramp to the collector car world is, there's a lot of them. You can buy cars for sub 50,000 that are really fun. You can buy a 6-figure car. You can buy a $500,000 car. But then there's this super high tier market that's exploding now. So the Bugatti Veyrons, the Pagani Huayras, the Enzos, cars like that. Now, what's interesting point is that this Enzo sold for money that was very close to the iconic McLaren F1. So you have to ask yourself, if you're going to spend $17.8 million on an Enzo, what's a McLaren F1 today?
By the way,
different level.
Cool tip on the side: if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and search for the video of Elon Musk accepting his F1. He takes delivery of it. It's like 25 years old. He's already lost all of his hair at that point, so he's bald. And now he's got, obviously, a fantastic head of hair that he's had reinserted. And I think technology, he no longer has the F1 because he sold all his stuff, right? But that's one of those cars that is just going to be unobtainium.
The collector vehicle market, though, is constantly in the media explained as a demographic phenomenon. I think that's certainly a part of it, but now it's in the financial realm, too. And billionaires are looking at these as bona fide assets that, even though cars just get older and need more maintenance, they become further away from what they were built for and how they were built, because modern manufacturing is not, they're not building cars the way they did 20, 30 years ago at Ferrari. It's much more automated, electric drive, hybrids, pure V12 engines, analog gearboxes. These are the things that collectors are going crazy for.
Philip, this is fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us. Matt, thanks for bringing Philip by. Philip Richter, president, partner, co-founder of Hollowbrook Wealth Management, talking about the car business, as we're wanting to do when Matt Miller comes into the studio. No matter what's going on in the world, we can turn and talk about cars. No problem there. Isabel, thank you so much for sitting in for Scarlett. Really appreciate it. Looking at the markets here, we're going to end this morning's session on the lows of the day. S&P off 40.6 tenths of 1%. The NASDAQ.
Imagine the merging of trusted intelligence into a unified experience. Imagine collaboration amongst teams and across continents. Imagine an empowered ecosystem inspiring actionable insights. That's the Connect effect.
Old Spice Fiji gives me 24/7 freshness. It's gentle on my skin, and it's mine.
I thought we had no secrets.
Babe, I just wanted something from...
But we've been on this phenomenal roller coaster. You had this kind of big hiring binge, particularly in tech, through to probably mid to late 2022. But it's difficult, I think, to look at the statistics and say we have this huge AI-driven wave happening.
Amazon has just announced a new round of layoffs, and that follows announcements by UPS this month and HP and Verizon in November, among other companies. So what's going on? Why are firms slimming down? And what, if anything, could it have to do with, say, the pandemic or with AI? Well, Matthew Bidwell is a professor of management at the Wharton School. He joins me for more. Matthew, welcome. Amazon has said it's cutting 16,000 on top of 14,000 it cut last year. UPS says it wants to cut 30,000 operational positions this year, HP between 4,000 and 6,000, and Verizon 13,000. Now, there are a variety of reasons given by each company, but we often see streamlining, reducing layers as reasons given. A few have also made it clear in the past that they want to achieve cost savings through AI. So my question to you, is this actually the great AI cull that we've been worried about?
No, I guess my overall message is probably don't panic. There are a lot of things going on there. I think particularly with the Amazon layoffs, what you're seeing is to some extent them getting ready for AI as they try and pivot their business and try and embed AI more deeply in everything. Like you say, some of it is this kind of post-pandemic slimming down as well. I don't think we're yet seeing a lot of evidence that people are being wholesale replaced by AI, and that's what's driving these layoffs.
Is there a theme amongst all of these layoffs? You said some may be getting ready for AI, a bit of post-pandemic bloat. Why all this now and sort of lumped together, or is that just coincidence?
I think it's just coincidence. I mean, one of the interesting things is if you look at economy-wide statistics, so a couple of people look at, there's a government survey of layoffs, the JOLT statistics. Other people look at new claims for unemployment. If you look at those, economy-wide, it looks like the rate of layoffs is pretty close to historical lows. So it's very hard to look at the data and say, yes, there's this huge wave of layoffs coming. We see these things, they're clearly very damaging for the people involved, but it's difficult, I think, to look at the statistics and say we have this huge AI-driven wave happening now.
Are these mostly larger companies where we're seeing this happen, or is this mirrored also in mid-sized or smaller companies right now?
I think it has been mainly large companies. One of the interesting things is, like I say, we're not seeing this kind of wholesale wave of layoffs in the nationwide data. You are seeing a lot of announcements by large companies. One reason for that could be we're actually seeing more layoffs among large companies than smaller companies. It's certainly not economy-wide.
When we say this could be coming down from the pandemic, describe to me what the past 5 years have looked like. I suppose there was a hiring spree. Was that labor force wide? Was that mostly amongst these bigger companies? And then are they all sort of shedding that now? Is it going back to pre-pandemic, or where are we?
Yeah, we've been on this phenomenal roller coaster in the US job market. I think obviously the pandemic, lots of people got fired initially. Very quickly, people realized that things were going to be better than they imagined. They started rehiring, I think, particularly in tech. And if you talk to people in the tech industry, they will tell you that during the couple of years after 2020, the number of people employed in those organizations increased astronomically. Like everybody there was like, where did all of these people come from? And so what we've been seeing over the last 2 years, I think, across a lot of those firms, has as much to do with attempts to unwind that, a sense that they went too far in a lot of that hiring, than it is kind of broader AI and those other changes. So I think it's been very difficult often to untangle those two influences.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the years after the pandemic, we saw a good bit of layoffs amongst tech companies along the kind of tech jobs, tech-related jobs. Now this seems to be a bit more white-collar and corporate. Maybe you can sort of parcel that apart for us.
I mean, I think there has been, so yes, you had this kind of big hiring binge, particularly in tech through to probably mid to late 2022, I'd say 2023 is where that turned. And a lot of that was unwinding the pandemic the pandemic hiring. More recent years, it may have spread a bit. You've also seen, I think, consulting has been kind of in a bit of a doldrums. Some of that probably actually related to kind of reduced spending by tech. People being generally, I think, tightening their belts. When you look at corporate America generally, indices of uncertainty have been through the roof, driven partly by technology, partly by government policy. Uncertainty is never very good for hiring and those sorts of things. So yes, I think there are a bunch of headwinds facing kind of US corporations at the moment that have kind of impacted employment. So far, most of that impact has actually been reduced hiring. So hiring rates are very low. That's what's making it hard, I think, for a lot of people to find jobs. We're not yet seeing economy-wide that translates into layoffs as well.
You said in an interview
When you need reliability, performance, and peace of mind.
Thanks, Denzo. Thanks, Denzo. Thanks, Denzo.
You can do it right, or you can do it twice.
Lysol knows when the whole house is sick, your laundry is sick. Adding Lysol laundry sanitizer kills 99.9% of illness-causing bacteria detergents leave behind. Clean is good, sanitized is better.
You said in an interview late last year, that this is the kind of job force or labor force economy where it could go either way. It's unclear which direction it's going. Do you still feel that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that much has changed in the last 2 months. I mean, the economy itself, In the US, it's continuing to grow, and people point out the effects of the tax cuts from last year's legislation will start to kick in. That should start to lead to kind of increased economic growth. So I think some of those fundamentals are quite good. There are definitely overhangs, government policy uncertainty. There are concerns, on the one hand, there are concerns that AI is going to take all of our jobs. On the other hand, there are concerns that if it doesn't, we have a huge AI bubble that's about to burst. Both of those things, I think, could potentially weigh on the labour market. So it's a difficult one to predict at the moment. It's kind of frozen in place. And like you say, we're waiting to see which way it's going to go.
You said some of these companies might be anticipating the role of AI coming in and being able to allow them to sort of streamline a bit more. Is there an expectation? Do you have an expectation that there will be significant cuts because of AI in the workforce?
I think it's very difficult to tell. I think if the technology froze where we were today, there would be some cuts, but probably not huge. I think the technology will continue to develop. The question is, how good will it get, how quickly? And I think that uncertainty makes it very difficult to know what impact it's going to have on the labour market over the next 2 to 3 years. All of that said, I think there's another factor here, which is, we hear all the time investors and boards are telling companies, you've got to replace people, you've got to embed AI in your processes, you've got to be using it to increase efficiency. So to some extent, I think that kind of top-down pressure to increase efficiencies to drive AI probably has almost as much impact as the technology itself.
Yeah, do you think that we understand actually the exposure of certain career fields to AI at this point? I read recently JP Morgan used the example of a radiologist. AI is deployed alongside a radiologist instead of replacing them because of the seriousness of the work, reading these x-rays and being able to deliver a kind of analysis of it. Do we understand where AI will really be able to take over and where it still might not?
No. I mean, back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, kind of the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, an incredibly smart man, made some throwaway comment about we should stop training radiologists now on the basis that AI was going to be able to read scans better than radiologists. And it's certainly the case. There's a lot of evidence. AI does a really good job of doing that. But kind of the main crisis in radiology in recent years has been a shortage of radiologists. So coming up for 10 years later, we still haven't seen it significantly impact that labour market. And so like you say, I think it's just hugely uncertain. It takes a long time to figure out what technologies can really do, how organizations are going to adjust, how consumers are going to adjust. And until that happens, I think it's quite difficult. You can point at probably a few occupations that say, yeah, I'm worried about that. But kind of labour force wide, very much in wait and see at the moment.
I want to wrap up by going back to the labor market one more time. Unemployment right now at 4.4% in the U.S. I'm curious if you see subsections that we should be watching. For example, youth or college educated. When you look at unemployment, when you look at the job force, what really stands out and distinguishes it from the past?
So the big piece that has got a lot of attention recently is young college graduates have what I would describe as a weirdly high unemployment rate. Right? College graduates generally have a much lower unemployment rate than people without college degrees. But when you look at young people, actually their unemployment rate in college graduates is higher than you would expect given the overall unemployment rate. It's higher than you would expect given the unemployment rate for high school graduates. There are a lot of explanations for that. Like I say, we've just not seen a lot of hiring going on recently. And when there's not a lot of hiring going on, the people are going to be most affected are people who are entering the job market for the first time. And so you kind of expect that for recent graduates. I think we've also seen over the last 4 or 5 years, the hottest labour market has actually been for what you might call frontline workers, people in retail, warehouses, all of those sorts of things, jobs that don't require a high school degree. And so we have seen a shift in where the demand is. What everybody is worried about is, again, could this also be about AI is best suited to replace kind of entry-level jobs, particularly among college graduates? It's possible, but I think the proof isn't there yet.
All right, that's Matthew Bidwell with the Wharton School. Matthew, thank you so much.
Thank you. Very nice to see you.
There's going to be a decoupling of labor and capital. And when it hits in mass, it's going to be a major disruption in the economy. How it's going to start is that corporations, they're going to try to squeeze their costs down, and a big part of their costs are labor. So they spend all this money in CapEx, capital expenditures, for AI development, training models, whatever, building up processes. Then there's a recession, and they start shedding off workers. Managers start to learn on how to manage their department with less people and with more AI agents. So it becomes structural. So when the recession starts to recover, there's not as many people employed. Now you'll have some new businesses created. But the thing is that do you need more stuff? How many more stuff do you need? Do you need to have more subscriptions for certain things, like software or for TV shows or for even groceries? Because now they have the subscription model for that too. Or clothing is a subscription model now. We're getting to a point where we don't need as much goods and services. And the number of jobs out there are going to diminish. So you have a corporation at the very beginning that learns that they can reduce a little bit of their headcount. They'll have a better bottom line and their stock price will go up. And they got to continue to do that. That's kind of a positive feedback loop to continue on having that better return. And other companies in their sector or in different industries catch on and do the same thing. And then what happens is that less people will start buying products because less people are working. See, the reason why we have a middle class is because Henry Ford was willing to pay his workers a wage where they could buy the vehicle. If you don't have employees being able to buy goods and services, your economy is going to go down, no matter how efficient you make your AI systems. Some of the economists out there, many, will say, well, it's just creative destruction and there'll be more businesses. I'm not so sure. There's going to be more optionality. For example, if you're designing a product and you're using AI systems, you'll be able, instead of to have one or two types of designs, you may have 3 or 4 types of designs, maybe with some options that the consumer can pick, different colors, maybe different shapes or whatever. You get the idea. Optionality sped up. But does the consumer really need that? All right. So if unemployment becomes structural, it's a big problem. Big problem. Because how do you fix it? What you'll have is people that will be going to their representative in Congress demanding social programs. And it'll usher in, AI will not usher in an enlightenment. AI could usher in Marxism. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. It's about 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day every day, and it will soak up free radicals, help the health of your cells, help the health of your neurons, help your cardiovascular health, boost up your immune system, help with your skin, help with your endocrine system, and slow down the aging process. Take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. This will also help with your skin, help with the basal layer. So the new skin cells that you have, they're healthier. I've been taking C60 since 2016, every day. Teaspoon a day. And what you will notice is that your body's functioning better, you have more energy, your immune system is better, your endocrine system, your cardiovascular system. These are all super important. And in 1 year, you will look younger from your baseline. So please, go to my store, get the C60, take it every day, slow down the aging process, and help your immune system and your endocrine system. It's really powerful, and it stacks really well with other supplements that I have, especially with the Boomer Boost, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. It stacks well with the resveratrol, the vitamin, multivitamin that I have, the probiotics. So if you stack them, you're going to get a synergistic benefit that helps to slow down the aging process. That's the end of my show. Please go to my store, get the great supplements that I offer. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day. My website is the-studio-reykjavik.com.